Chapter 541 I'm really a water-draining master. The liquid gold armor, said by Steel Hammer, is really handsome, and has a hint of science fiction. This unique piece of armor is shaped like bright silver horns when not in use, making it easy to carry when using it. As long as the user injects a certain amount of magic power into the metal horn, it will spread out like a fluid. It adheres to the user's body, and becomes a streamlined armor. This process is very similar to the process in which the Cretan bull enters its second-order form, and the bull metal quickly covers the entire body. It's not how Steel Hammer was able to restore this. It can only be said that he spent more than half a year, and was really serious about building equipment. After that, through the introduction of Steel Hammer and Dorn's own hands-on testing, he roughly knew the effect of liquid gold armor. The strange metal on the Cretan bull has the ability to resist magical attacks. Therefore, when Dorn faced the second-level bull before, abilities such as Dream and Charm failed to take effect. Fortunately, the armor on the bull's forehead itself had cracks at that time, and Dorn relied on brute force to bite it and break through its defense. Lujin armor inherits the effect of Nyojin very well, and also has the ability to resist magic attacks. But this piece of equipment doesn't mean much to Dorn. In fact, after becoming a god, there were only a few pieces of equipment left for Dorn to choose from. In battle, the soul-inducing lantern is still useful. The Wenfeng's lamenting ring, which was stained with the divine nature of chaos after sucking the blood of 3 demigod beasts, is also somewhat useful. When it comes to cooking, it can be used as a kitchen utensil to speed up the cooking time, and it can also be of great help. Old Steel Hammer's appraisal gloves can occasionally be used to appraise props. There is also Alice's bedtime reading, which can be used as a portable space, and can also be used to relieve boredom for my daughter. Apart from this, most of the other props and equipment are of no use. Like this piece of liquid gold armor. It can withstand magical attacks that Dorn can easily withstand with his godly body. And if there is any magic attack that can hurt Dorn, there is really no point in wearing liquid gold armor on the body. Not to mention, this piece of metal gear has certain negative effects. Although it can resist magic attacks, it also suppresses the wearer's own magic attributes. To put it simply, as long as the user wears liquid gold armor, the user's own magic damage will be weakened to a certain extent. This characteristic of guarding against enemies and self is probably the inherent attribute of Nyojin. After all, the original Cretan bull was not good at using magic, and its attack method was very simple. It is precisely based on these advantages and disadvantages that Dorn positioned this cool set of metal equipment at the SR level. It's not useless, but for a god, it's really a big useless. However, considering that this equipment was sent all the way by Steel Hammer, it was more or less the dwarf leader's heartfelt wish. Dorn did not let anyone's heart go cold. He accepted the liquid gold armor with a smile and was enthusiastic at the same time. He opened his mouth and said, "Thank you, Steel Hammer. Besides, it's not easy for you to come all the way. You just need to stay here for a few days. There are a lot of delicious and fun things in Eden Town. I'll let Hog show you around later." "Okay, Mr. Dorn. It's my honor to do some trivial work for you." Steel Hammer nodded energetically, and then went out to meet Hog in a happy mood. Like a primary school student who was praised by the teacher, he didn't seem to mind at all that Hog was obviously his subordinate. But now, he was following Dorn's orders. Speaking of which, Halfling Hog and the dwarf guards led by him have confirmed that they will stay in Eden Town for a long time. As for the team of Tauren led by Monster Girl Benitha, most of the young men returned to Dawn Island. But not long after, Captain Hector brought another group of Tauren women and children to Eden for exchange and study. Since the last battle of Eden Town, the exchanges between Kasadam and Dawn Island and the Food City Eden Town are much closer. The residents around Eden welcomed these demi-human heroes who protected their lives. For the dwarf and Tauren groups, it is a good thing with no harm at all to find an area in the human principality that does not exclude demi-humans at all and establish a small base there. Everyone makes money. Speaking of which, should I give this liquid gold armor away? At first, I just entrusted Steel Hammer to help me make some equipment. I didn't say that I would definitely use it myself after finishing it. So it shouldn't matter. Right. After Steel Hammer left, Dorn began to think about the issue of keeping the SR-class alloy equipment in hand. If you keep it in your hands, it's basically just an appearance skin. If you give it to people around you and put it to good use, you can maximize the value of this piece of equipment. But who should I give it to? Dorn touched his chin and started thinking. When it comes to giving something away, The first person he thinks of is of course Vivian. However, as soon as the idea came up, he rejected it. Lugene armor and Vivian don't have a good compatibility. And they even have a bit of a conflict. Since regaining the abilities and memories of the Fairy Queen, Miss Goblin has transformed from an unconventional to a mainstream mage who loves to use arcane magic to clean the ground. This piece of SR alloy equipment has the characteristic of suppressing the user's magic damage, which is not suitable for Vivian. Then again, it seems like I haven't given Vivian a gift for a long time. I should give her something else instead of liquid gold armor. Don shook his head and continued thinking. Basically no one else in the restaurant will fight. There is only one Belle who can fight. But this guy is a thief. He can do stealth and stealth. But wearing armor and fighting head-on is not suitable for her. Moreover, ever since Ling Jinping quit her job and became the proprietress of a bar, she has become more and more ordinary. Every day I listen to the gossips of the drinkers. Or to the representatives of the demi-human guard team stationed in Eton. In recognition of their great contribution to the peace of Eton, the reason for giving it to the representative of the town guard is very good. And neither dwarves nor Tauren often use magic, so it is very suitable for the use of this new equipment. But if you think about it carefully, it's actually not easy to operate. There is only one piece of liquid gold armor, and it was given to the calm and calm dwarf Captain Hogg, which seemed to neglect the brave and fearless monster girl beneath her. Vice versa. After all, the town guard is composed of two races, in order not to favor one against the other, and for the sake of everyone's harmony, it is better not to send either side. Who else? Priests? Adele and Cross seem to be very suitable for this armor. That doesn't seem right either. This time it's not a matter of two races. They are two friends who are close to each other. Why should they give this one instead of that one? I never thought it would be so troublesome to give a gift. After much thought, Dorn finally had an idea and thought of an extremely suitable candidate. His little brother Hyena goes out on adventures. Gregor wrote a letter before, saying that Hyena has been promoted to a B-level adventurer. It's reasonable for me, the eldest brother, to give him a gift to congratulate him. Moreover, the Hyena itself does not use much magic. At most, it uses a little magic power to activate the Howler, which is very compatible with SR's Metal Gear. Although Gregor doesn't say much, he also cares about his little apprentice in his heart. The equipment, Howler, is given to hyenas. To a certain extent, I, the eldest brother, are compared to him. I came down just in time to deliver liquid gold armor to solidify my position in the little brother's heart. It was decided that liquid gold armor would be given to the hyenas, while maximizing the value of this piece of equipment. No one would be emotional. I'm really a master at carrying water. I can hold a bowl of water evenly. Chapter 542 Adventurers of Beach City. Beach City. This is a small city in the west of the Dona Empire, close to the border with the Tazan Empire, basically located on the edge of the battlefield between the two countries. Because it is close to the more desolate border, there are few large-scale cities and towns in this area. The small beach city can be regarded as the most prosperous area here. It is also the only place where the Adventurers Association is settled. The Adventurers Association in Beach City is different from the ones in big cities. It is very simple. Strictly speaking, it is not an association, but more like a tavern. Association receptionists here even work part-time as bartenders to make extra money. Morning. As usual, various adventurers and mercenaries gathered in this informal association. These guys who are used to being lax or drinking and having fun while taking care of their tasks. The entire association was filled with the smell of alcohol and hormones. Squeak. The wooden door of the association was pushed open. Someone walked in carrying the cold wind. Because Beach City is in the northwest, the weather becomes colder after autumn. At first, not many adventurers at the scene cared about who was pushing the door in. After all, it was a place full of people coming and going. It wasn't until someone whistled at the person who came in that more and more eyes focused on the person. There was no doubt that the person who came in was a woman. She seemed to be young. And there was only one person. In this barren land near the border, female adventurers acting alone are rare. Even less so at such a young age. She wears a hooded cloak with fur, and her face is covered by the hood. Her cloak was open, and she could see a crossbow, a dagger, and a short sword tied around her waist with a leather belt. Or, if you look at it from the front, this female adventurer seems to have a very good figure. Only then did a certain frivolous and rude mercenary whistle at her. The female adventurer paused in the short deerskin boots she was wearing and turned her head slightly to confirm the source of the whistle. All she saw was a young mercenary with a greasy appearance, sitting astride the bench beside the wine table, spreading his thighs and grinning obscenely at her. The female adventurer shook her head, sighed, and then raised her hand. The crossbow at her waist was held in her right hand for some unknown reason. Boom! The next second, the feather arrow shot out and nailed directly to the bench where the mercenary was sitting, about 7 or 8 centimeters away from his crotch. This set of movements is smooth and flowing. The greasy-looking mercenary obviously didn't expect to come out like this. He spread his legs wide and was stunned for a while. After he came to his senses, he sat down patting himself, cursed and said some vulgar words, pretended to stand up in a menacing manner. But the young female adventurer didn't accept this at all. Standing still, his right hand was steadily raised again. This time, her crossbow aimed at the opponent's head. The greasy mercenary action was another meal. Immediately afterwards, he felt the mocking eyes of the other adventurers around him. Oh! No. It wasn't just the eyes. Many people laughed out loud. Also, the association receptionists, who were part-time bartenders, also set their sights on him. The Adventurers Association is an association after all, no matter how informal it looks on the outside. There are rules to follow here. The greasy mercenary was rude at the front, while the female adventurer fought back at the back. If he were to start a fight here, the mercenary would be a dwarf in terms of both emotion and reason, and the people in the association would not tolerate him. So, he was scared. The mercenary stared at the female adventurer angrily, and then wanted to say something harsh to regain some face. But looking at the bright arrows mounted on the crossbow, he couldn't even say harsh words. In the end, he had to suppress his blush and sit down amidst the roar of everyone's laughter. The female adventurer put away her crossbow silently, continued to walk towards the bar with her small deerskin boots on. "Show me the most recent commissions, the ones that pay the most." Her voice was quite clear, but it had a slight accent that a Dona person wouldn't have. "Any drinks?" The receptionist glanced at her and handed over a yellowed piece of paper. "This isn't a to-do list, though, but a drinks menu." "I want to see the commission." The female adventurer repeated her words impatiently, then took out a metal round card and placed it on the bar. "That's the adventurer's certificate. A level." Several adventurers near the bar caught a glimpse of the round card and couldn't help but smack their lips in surprise. A level adventurer. No wonder he dared to use his weapon directly against the greasy mercenary just now. If this certificate was really hers, few people present would be able to provoke her. The mercenary who had just suffered a loss under her hands had to lower his head and take a detour when he saw her in a one-on-one situation, even if he was outside the association. In addition, this round certificate bears the characteristics of Tazin's Adventurer Association in some detailed carvings. But that's not important. Whether it is the Adventurers Association, the Merchants Association, or the Musicians Association, these organizations all span several grand duchies and have stations in various countries. Especially the Adventurer Association. As long as you are an adventurer, any station will recognize your identity. Even if like this female adventurer. When Dona and Tazin were still at war, no one would care if she took out a round card certificate that clearly belonged to Tazin and showed up blatantly in the association in Dona. Adventurers and mercenaries are originally extremely neutral groups. Most people do things for anyone who gives them money. The receptionist picked up the round sign, checked it, and then put it down. Generally, adventurer certificates contain the name or code name of the owner. What is engraved under this sign is Anaconda. This is probably the code name used by this female adventurer, a type of python that lives in the Tazin area. Then, the receptionist's tone became a little more respectful, but she did not change her stance. "Miss Anaconda, there are a lot of A-level adventurers coming here recently. What would you like to drink?" In this informal association in Beach City, it seems to be an unwritten rule to order drinks and earn some small money for the receptionist before accepting the commission. It seems that the receptionist of the association in front of me has strange persistence in some strange places. The Anaconda came back to his senses and sighed speechlessly. She picked up the yellowed wine list and stretched out her slender index finger to click on one of the drinks. Then he took out his wallet and poured out some money. Her money was all scattered copper and AR. The Anaconda laid out 15 copper coins on the bar with a slightly reluctant expression. "Warm a bowl of wine." She wanted bad wine. Some women in the west side of Dona and in the Tazin area warm wine and drink it in cold weather. "Okay, miss." The receptionist nodded, handed over a handwritten list of entrustments, and then turned to prepare the wine. Chapter 543 Hyena and Anaconda. The anaconda took the list of commissions and flipped through a few pages. The receptionist behind the bar warmed a bowl of dim wine and handed it out. The anaconda raised his head slightly, seemingly hesitant, but finally took the wine bowl. This was bought for 15 copper nails. I didn't have much money on me, so it would be a waste if I didn't drink it. The anaconda picked up the wine bowl and took a small sip. Woo! Bitter and astringent. She doesn't like or know how to drink. So, why do so many people like to drink? The anaconda thought in his mind, and then continued to pick up the commission list and look through it, trying to find a job that would make money quickly. The colleagues who were closer to the bar did not dare to provoke Anaconda again because they caught a glimpse of Anaconda's A-level certificate, and continued drinking, chatting and looking for tasks. Among them, someone was talking about the war between Dona and Tazan. What did you say just now? Oh, by the way, the Tazan Empire seems to be almost unable to sustain itself and is preparing to surrender to Dona for peace. A sloppy mercenary wearing cotton clothes and rotten leather armor said this. A man with rosacea and a leather hat sitting next to him answered. Surrender. Are those barbarians in the West willing to surrender? Aren't they the most bellicose? The furry man was immersed in a conversation with his companions and did not notice that when the words, "Those barbarians in the West," were spoken, the anaconda not far away from him glanced at him coldly. Mercenary in cotton clothes. Don't shout so loudly. There are several adventurers in this room who look like Tazan people. What's the matter? A barbarian is a barbarian. Why don't you let others talk about it? The man in the leather hat looked indifferent, but his voice was much lower sincerely. By the way, is your news reliable? Of course it's reliable. Haven't you seen how capable the troops from the north are? As soon as they arrived here, they won 2 great victories in a row, driving all Tazan's troops beyond the border. This topic aroused the interest of other people around, and many people began to talk about why the troops from the north were so capable of fighting. Some people say that it was the wisdom of the little Princess Henrietta, who accompanied the army, and the proper command and employment that led to the overall victory on the frontal battlefield. Didn't I say that as long as Tazan is defeated, the Prince of the North will be crowned as the new Emperor Dona? Then the little Princess Henrietta will be the future Queen Dona. Only now do I know how powerful the royal father and daughter who have been staying low-key in the north are. No wonder the royal city will lose to them. If Dona is defeated by this, the leadership of father and daughter will definitely be great again. Some people also say that the main reason the northern army can fight is because the Duke of Phoenix in the north is old and strong. A few months ago, Archduke Phoenix personally led 500 cavalry in the Ping River Valley and charged into the Tazan army camp of 10,000 people at night. He beheaded the commander and retreated, establishing a great victory in one fell swoop. This wave is called Old Grand Duke Wei Jinping Valley. I heard that the children in Tazan now don't dare to cry at night as long as they hear the name of Grand Duke Phoenix. Some people also believe that Veronica, the Red Lotus Witch, under the little princess, is as active on the battlefield as her grandfather. Veronica once relied on herself alone, relying on the prairie fire that could burn the sky, and burn down the entire Centurion team of the Tazan army. Anyway, the adventurers with Dona looks in the association all joined the discussion, and they were full of energy while having different opinions. As for the few adventurers who looked like Tazan, because there were so many people in this association, they all had dark faces and said nothing. 2 of them simply slammed the door and left. Although the adventurers as a group are neutral in the world, most of them still prefer their hometown in their hearts when it comes to the war between Tazan and Dona. The anaconda was also a little unbearable by the noise from the donors around him. He flipped through the commission list in a rough manner, and drank the bowl of warm wine that was not delicious in one gulp with some irritation. There was a lot of noise in the association, and they were talking. The man in cotton-padded clothes who was the initiator of the topic saw that the atmosphere around him was heated, and the few Tazan adventurers didn't say anything, so they started a new round of big rhythm. I also heard that one of the peace preparations in Tazan is a marriage. The Emperor of Tazan plans to marry one of his daughters to Dona. Ha ha! Real or fake? Man in cotton-padded clothes. Of course it's true. The news I heard from Beidutong is not false. I also know more. The one I want to marry is an illegitimate daughter of Emperor Tazan. She was admitted to the palace only a few years ago. Our old emperor no longer has a son, and the son of the Prince of the North is already married, or too young. So Tazin's illegitimate daughter Princess was arranged to marry a grandson of Grand Duke Phoenix. It seems to be called, yes, named Creek. This matter has been spread all over Tazin. After hearing these words, the surrounding Dona adventurers all started laughing under the influence of alcohol. The Emperor on Tazin's side was obviously domineering before the war started. But now, he suffered defeat and lost his daughter. As a Dona person, I feel so proud. Don't be anxious. Don't be anxious. I have even more powerful news. The man in cotton-padded clothes became more enthusiastic and stood up with a wine glass in hand. The illegitimate princess from the west didn't listen to her father's arrangements at all and has already run away. This matter is also spreading in Tazin. It's absolutely true. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere at the scene reached a climax. I dare you that the man in cotton-padded clothes still has such an amazing big melon in his hands. The adventurers started clinking glasses and started talking. At this time, many people began to burp and criticize the princess from a neighboring country whom they had never met before. Looking at it from the perspective of a neutral adventurer and a pure passerby, let's analyze it rationally. Hiccup, that illegitimate daughter princess is really so irresponsible. In her own country, her own father is called the one on the side. The enemy country has lost its armor. Such a huge responsibility fell on her. And she ran away. It's outrageous. At this time, the anaconda sitting in front of the bar stood up. He took out his withered money bag, opened it, and the few coins fell on the bar. This small move did not affect the lively discussion atmosphere in the association. Another glass of wine. Something a little better this time. Miss Anaconda? The receptionist looked at the coins on the bar and began to hesitate about how to tell this A-level adventurer lady that these few coins were probably not enough to order a full glass of good spirits. The discussion among those on the side continued. I say, brother, even if the princess really suffers some hardships when she gets married, it is a necessary sacrifice. As long as she makes some sacrifices, her country and her family will have a chance to breathe. There is no awareness at all. TSK. It's really pitiful and pathetic. That's right. That's right. That princess is so willful and selfish. The anaconda finally became extremely impatient after hearing these harsh words for her. Seeing the cowardly way in which the receptionist in front of him kept saying nothing and refused to get the wine, Anaconda felt that something in his heart was broken. She raised her hand and slapped it on the bar with all her strength. Snapped. Don't you understand what I'm saying? I said I'd like a stronger drink. Other discussions in the audience suddenly stopped and were interrupted by a loud slap on the table and a loud shout. Okay. Miss. The poor receptionist was so frightened by the anaconda's momentum that he finally ignored the price and pathetically took the change on the bar to prepare the wine. The anaconda turned his head, took off his wide black hood, and faced the adventurers who had just been talking the loudest. She is very beautiful, with a standard Tazin look, with wheat-colored skin, upright and deep facial features, and long dark red hair with naturally curly curves. In the eyes of the Dona people, she is an exotic beauty, perhaps because she was too drunk. Anaconda's tight face was a little red. She took a big breath, and the taste of inferior wine still remained in her mouth. Sacrifice. That sounds so nice. Do you know the illegitimate princess you talk about? Why do you ask her to make sacrifices? Why? Just for Tazin? For her father? Stop joking. What did Tazin give her? Let me think about it. Oh yes. She gave her ridicule, slaps, spittle, and fists, when she didn't have enough to eat when she was a child. And when her mother was bullied by bad people. Did anyone help them? When she was called a bitch and a bastard. And her mother was driven out from home to the street like a stray dog. Where was her rich and precious emperor? The anaconda spoke louder and louder, while all the other adventurers fell silent. At this time, the receptionist had already poured out a glass of good spirits. But seeing the emotional state of this A-level adventurer lady, she just held the glass in her hand, neither passing it to her nor putting it down. The anaconda obviously noticed this, and quickly grabbed the wine glass with his own hands. She was getting a little thirsty. The glass filled with wine was lifted and gulped down. The anaconda drank a whole glass of strong wine in front of everyone in silence. The spicy and pungent taste surged in the mouth and stomach. The wine really doesn't taste good. The anaconda threw the wine glass aside, shook his dizzy head, and calmed down. That's why I hate you sanctimonious Dona people. You are ridiculous. You know? You say you are a reserved and civilized person. But you say I am a barbarian. Ha ha. Yes. Yes. You civilized people think that you know everything. Even if you don't understand things at all, you still have to point fingers in a condescending manner. No one has the right to ask her to sacrifice. The people on Tazin's side are not worthy. And neither are you. What does it have to do with her whether to negotiate peace or not? Even if your donut army reaches the base of Tazin's royal city, there will be another fight with her. What is the relationship? She doesn't care. She doesn't owe anyone. So shut your mouth. Do you understand? I don't care. Thanks to the drunkenness of his talk, the anaconda blurted out the third person in his words into the first person. This shouldn't be the case. The anaconda felt that he might be a little drunk. He was obviously still conscious, but he just couldn't control his words and actions. But it doesn't matter, right? Venting loudly, the anaconda felt unprecedentedly relaxed. She picked up the thick to-do list on the bar and pulled out one of them. In fact, before ordering that glass of strong drink, the anaconda had already found a task that could make a lot of money. Hey, I want to do this. The anaconda took a photo of the commission in front of the receptionist. There may be a degenerate nearby who spreads famine. Investigate him and get rid of him. The reward is 60 silver NAR. I want to do this. The commission tasks in the Beach City Adventurers Association are not as formal as those in the big city. After the adventurer accepts the task, he can receive the corresponding reward as long as he proves that he has completed it. Miss Thorny Anaconda. The receptionist didn't know how many times she was in trouble. I'm afraid you won't be able to take on this task. Why? I am A-level. Huh? A-level. Thorny Anaconda slapped the table and began to emphasize. Yes, I know. But this mission was issued by the adults in the Holy See. They have requirements that 2 adventurers of B-level or above can take it. 2? The anaconda picked up the commission and looked at it carefully, only to realize that there seemed to be such annotation on it. She narrowed her drunken eyes and scanned the adventurers around her. TSK. Definitely don't team up with these people. However, the anaconda was reluctant to give up this commission. This is a full 60 silver coins. On the streets of Beach City, the autumn wind was cold, and there were not many people in sight. It's a bit cold today. A boy dressed as an adventurer, about 16 or 17 years old, was walking alone on a deserted small street. His face is dark. His dark red hair is a little messy, but his eyes are very sharp. Wearing a thick cloth and a fine leather armor. The other equipment on his body is worth mentioning. There is a silver horn hanging on the chest. It is obviously a large metal pendant, but after looking at it for a long time, you will feel that the thing has an inexplicable flowing texture, carrying a very strange-looking mechanical object with a dwarven pragmatism style on his back. It seemed to be a weapon. A wristband filled with magic power was worn on the left wrist and covered under the cloth. A leather belt of good quality was tied around his waist. Hanging from it was a purple gold-decorated horn and a hunting knife. This well-equipped young adventurer is naturally Dorn's little brother, the hyena. The hyena walked straight to the Informal Adventurers Association in Beach City, imitating his elder brother's usual way of thinking, and touched his chin. Forget it. Just take the mission alone. Today's hyena acts alone. His inconspicuous master Gregor came to Beach City and stabbed his butt with a knife to open the hyena's eyes. Gregor has been hanging out with a local lady since last night, but she has not been seen yet. Before going to fool around, it is also called to train the hyena's independence. The hyena has followed his master for so long, not because he doesn't understand how romantic and sinful he is. However, it's fine if you have a crush in the big cities you often visit. Why would there be someone in a small border town like this? How many good wives do you still have? It would be great if the master could be as reliable as Brother Dorn. The hyena sighed helplessly and walked towards the closed door of the association. Chapter 544 The Strange Fallen Person. The hyena walked into the association. He followed Greglu and stayed around Beach City for a while. This seemingly informal adventurers association also visited several times. The atmosphere in the association is a bit strange today. The adventurers who were always noisy at ordinary times were as quiet as chickens. The most they could do was whisper to each other. Most people's attention is focused on the bar. There stood a girl dressed as an adventurer. She looked a little drunk, but also high-spirited. Her appearance has typical Tazan characteristics, and she seems to be about the same age as herself, or 1 or 2 years older. Looking at the atmosphere at the scene, Hyena felt that he might have missed a good show. However, he didn't pay too much attention. In front of all the silent adventurers in the association, He calmly walked to the bar and took out his medal certificate. Give me a glass of rye. I saved the money here last time. Then, I want to see the commission. A set of movements is familiar and very experienced. The receptionist checked the adventurer's voucher, looked at the hyena, and then at the anaconda beside him, nodded slowly, and went to prepare the wine. The hyena tapped her fingertips on the bar and waited for her drink. Then she realized that the young female adventurer next to her, who seemed to be the center of attention, was squinting her drunken eyes and looking at her face. Are you a B-level adventurer? The anaconda just noticed the level on the hyena's certificate. Want to take on a commission? Hey, that's just right. The anaconda laughed, smelling of alcohol when he opened his mouth. Sister, I have a quick-paying commission, and I just want to bring you one. At the same time, she showed the order form and the A-level adventurer certificate in her hand. The hyena's face was expressionless, but he frowned. The hyena and the anaconda left the association together. When leaving, he noticed that some adventurers in the association looked at him and the anaconda unkindly, so he paid more attention to them. After going out, the hyena rubbed the liquid gold armor hanging on his chest and was careful all the way. But no one followed him. Maybe those people were a little wary of the fact that the female adventurer they were traveling with was A-level. But then again, this A-level adventurer named Anaconda seems to be unreliable. I was drunk after going out. He also yelled that he was not drunk and wanted to prove it to the hyenas by walking in a straight line. Is this guy really okay? The little hyena murmured in his heart. Anyway, he and the anaconda formed an impromptu partnership. No way. The mission issued by the Holy See. There is a 20 silver reward for investigating and providing key information, and a 60 silver reward for directly dealing with the fallen. It is too tempting. During this time, the Holy See was active around the battlefields of Tazan and Dona. According to Hyena's knowledge, these Holy See personnel seem to have come to prevent the abnormal famine in this area. In the cities where the Adventurer Association is stationed in Beach City and Tazan, you can occasionally receive commissions from the Holy See. These commissions generally come with considerable rewards, because the scope of scattered activities of those fallen persons is too large. Some areas where there are suspected activities of fallen persons cannot be taken care of by the Holy See staff, so they will first delegate them to capable adventurers in the form of entrustment. When a priest is free, he will go to the corresponding area to fill the position. In addition, Hyena noticed that the name of the person who commissioned the issue was Ji Xiao. It sounds very familiar, as if he is my eldest brother's friend in the Holy See. At the celebration banquet after defeating the giant octopus in the sea, we had met each other. 3 days passed in a flash. During this period, Hyena returned to his temporary residence and left a note for his master Greglu, who had not returned yet, explaining that he had accepted a commission from the Holy See. After that, he stayed around Beach City. According to his and Anaconda's investigation, it seems that there is really a corrupted person who can spread famine operating nearby. A single fallen person is not very strong. In fact, when the hyena followed Greglu in Tazan a while ago, the master and the apprentice also dealt with several such humanoid monsters. With Hyena's current strength and sophisticated equipment, he has a high chance of winning when meeting the fallen one-on-one. Not to mention there is an A-level adventurer working with him. Therefore, to the hyena, that fallen person is nothing more than a walking 60 silver coins. There is nothing to be afraid of. On the night of the 3rd day, after receiving the commission from the Holy See, a sparse frozen coniferous forest somewhere west of Dona, the wind in the late autumn night was biting. And except for the sound of the wind, everything was quiet. There is no moon visible in the night sky tonight, but the stars are much brighter, and the starlight is so thick that it seems to be dripping from the night sky. The hyena lay quietly behind a slope, waiting silently. It was a hunt, an ambush, and the hunter-turned hyena was very good at it. According to the investigation and tracking during this period, it is very likely that the degenerate who is active in the surrounding area will appear in the coniferous forest tonight. Under a bare tree not far away, there was the carcass of an elk. The elk had just died, and even the wounds on its body were fresh. But the deer's body exuded a faint rotten smell. This rotten smell is strange, with a sense of danger and monster. Even scavenging vultures will not be attracted to this smell, but will flee far away. Therefore, there is no wild animal activity in this sparse coniferous forest, and the people this rotten smell can really attract are the fallen. After the 2 hyenas took over the mission of the Holy See 3 days ago, they received a small bottle of scarlet-colored potion from the receptionist. All commissions issued by the Holy See to investigate and eliminate the fallen will be equipped with such a strange bottle of alchemical potion. The method of using the potion is very simple. Just apply it on a fresh animal carcass. After a while, the carcass will emit a smell that attracts the fallen. The potion hyena and the others received have been used twice in the past 2 days. And it was almost gone after the third time. If we can't successfully hunt the fallen tonight, we can basically declare this mission a failure. We can only do the next best thing. Sort out the clues and information obtained during the past 3 days of investigation. And see if we can get the consolation reward of 20 silver nails from the Holy See. Hyena, let's talk about it. Did you choose your codename yourself? Or did someone else choose it for you? My codename, Anaconda, was chosen by me myself. I don't know if it was because waiting was too boring. But the anaconda lying on the edge got a little closer to the hyena. In the past 3 days, the two of them got along pretty well. After all, the little hyena brother doesn't talk much and doesn't have any bad habits. As long as the temporary teammate is a normal person, there will be basically no conflict with him. The anaconda, who is not drunk, is indeed a normal person. Hyena is not my codename. That's what I call it, the hyena responded, while calmly moving twice in the direction away from the anaconda. Thorny Boa's expression froze. But he didn't seem to want to give up talking. Then your name is pretty cool. You see? Your name is Hyena. And I named myself Thorny Boa. And the two of us, it's all. If you are hungry, the dry food is in the bag. You can just get it yourself. The hyena held the howler in hand, staring intently at the elk carcass, and then dismissed his teammates with a more perfunctory tone. Well, my sister is right about you. Once I get the reward I entrusted this time, I will immediately pay you back the money I owe you these days. The anaconda lay on the ground, blinked and nodded to the hyena, then turned over and approached the small bag on the side, and skillfully dug out a tasteless scone and a piece of dried meat. This A-level adventurer spent the last of his money in the association 3 days ago. She was penniless. If she couldn't catch any wild prey in the past 3 days, or if the prey was used as bait like now, she would have to rely on the hyena's portable rations. The anaconda broke off a few pieces of scones and dried meat, stuffed some into his mouth randomly, took out the hyena's water bladder, and drank 2 mouthfuls. Then he wiped the corners of his mouth. Oh, I survived. I thought I was going to starve to death in this cold autumn night. After simply satisfying her hunger, she quietly crawled back to the hyena. She was about to say something, but the latter quickly raised his hand to cover his mouth. Shh. Something is coming. The hyena used his other hand to make a silencing gesture near his mouth. The anaconda then fell silent. Rustling. There was indeed a noise coming from inside the coniferous forest, but the surroundings were so dark that the anaconda couldn't see what was approaching. At most, she could only see the surroundings of the elk carcass that served as bait. Further into the forest, there was a dark blind spot. In contrast, hyenas have very good innate night vision. After following Gregor, he also practiced more in this area, and drank some alchemical potions that could enhance his eyesight. So, he can see the fallen. The hyena gently released his hand from the anaconda's mouth and whispered. Those sharp eyes flashed with excitement. Yes. The anaconda waited patiently for a while, and finally a squirming humanoid creature emerged from the forest. It looks like he is a fallen person. The anaconda came all the way from Tazan, and had seen this kind of humanoid monster before. The fallen man approached the dead deer while crawling on all fours. Without any hesitation, he pounced on it like a wild beast with eyes red from hunger, and directly bit into the fishy deer meat. The crunching sound of chewing can be heard clearly. The hyena judged the timing and grasped the howler tightly, preparing to attack. However, the anaconda next to him was a little faster than him. The A-level female adventurer jumped out from behind the slope nimbly. In the process, she had already held the delicate crossbow firmly in her hand. The arrow shot out like meteors, passing a bit of cold light in the night. This arrow is very accurate and powerful. The steel arrowhead pierced the fallen man's head, bringing out some red and white rot and splashing on the frozen soil of the coniferous forest. After one arrow passed, the fallen fell to the ground stiffly. Bingo. The anaconda exhaled a breath of white air, but did not take it lightly immediately. Instead, he calmly raised the crossbow and filled the arrows, and shot another arrow at the head of the fallen man who had stopped moving. Precise and elegant. Last hitting is a good habit. even if the fallen person has much stronger physical fitness than ordinary people. If 2 steel arrows are pierced through his head, he will die. At this time, the anaconda put down her hand, looked sideways at the hyena behind her who had not had time to move, and showed a smile that she thought was very reliable. "Look," my sister said, "she would help you complete this task. Just wait for the money." In the eyes of the anaconda, she is level A, while the hyena is level B. Her strength is naturally much stronger than that of the hyena. And when she first took over the mission, she was so drunk that she boasted to the hyena. Therefore, she should have taken on more responsibilities in this commission task. But, in these 3 days, hyenas were mainly responsible for tracking and investigation. Aside from being edible, the anacondas did little to help. There is no way around it. Hyenas are natural hunters, and are very good at hunting down enemies. Fortunately, the battle stage was finally reached, and the anaconda, who was confident that his skills were definitely stronger, could finally show off his skills and feel proud. After listening to the words of his temporary teammate for 3 days, the hyena brother was not in a hurry to express his opinion. He just silently glanced at the fallen man who was lying on the ground motionless, and then walked silently to the anaconda with howler in hand. Around, the latter maintained a slightly proud expression, and his mouth almost turned into a W shape. The anaconda took off the dagger from his waist and walked towards the fallen man. For this type of cleanup commission, it is customary to kill the corresponding monster or target, and then take a token from its body that can prove that you have killed the other party. During this period, anyone who completed the Vatican's task of eradicating the fallen would bring back a finger or an ear of the fallen to the association. This kind of humanoid monster that has completed its transformation will have huge distortions in its body organs due to the wriggling of its flesh and blood. So it is basically impossible to fake it. After that, the adventurer will have to report the location of the target, and then someone from the Holy See will verify it and hand over the money to the association. The association will draw a certain commission from it. The adventurer who killed a fallen can get his share of the bounty from the receptionist the next time he comes to the association. The anaconda approached the prey she had killed, squatted down, raised the dagger, and endured nausea, intending to cut off the ears from the side of the opponent's head that had lost its basic outline. At this moment, the already dead fallen man moved. A thin, black mist with a depraved aura emerged out of thin air. Then, a series of deformed tumors and granulation surged out from under the fallen man's body, breaking through the originally tattered rags. For a moment, the fallen man who was supposed to be motionless became even more inhuman, like a big puddle of squirming rotten flesh. "Hungry!" There was a sound, but it was not coming from the mouth of the fallen man, whose shape was almost indistinguishable. Chapter 545. I'm hungry. I'm so hungry. Phew. Gulu. This is the sound of flesh and blood writhing and writhing. The puddle of rotten flesh on the ground was spreading at a speed that the anaconda could not imagine. The scarlet flesh completely overflowed from the fallen man's shabby clothes, swallowing up its original limbs and facial features. The eerie and terrifying black fog is getting worse. Phew. Gulu. The pile of rotten flesh that was originally spread out on the ground began to bulge upwards, turning into a disgusting pillar of flesh as tall as a person. There is a sarcoma the size of an adult's head, which is pushing out from the center of the flesh column. When the sarcoma was opened, there was a huge scarlet eyeball inside. All these changes happened too fast and too scary. So much so that the anaconda, which had just squatted down with the dagger, didn't react at all and looked directly into that terrifying eyeball. What can be confirmed is that this huge eyeball definitely does not belong to the fallen person itself. The negativity, resentment, and hatred contained in it are almost suffocating. "Hungry! So hungry!" The anaconda heard a voice shouting in his ears. She felt her consciousness drifting, and she felt a primitive, uncontrollable hunger rushing through her body. Just when the anaconda was about to lose herself, a powerful impact struck from the side, causing her to fly far away in a flat parabola like a kite with its string broken. The A-level adventurer fell heavily to the ground. The severe pain in her abdominal ribs made her curl up and retching and cramping for a long time. But she was also out of the range of close eye contact with that huge eyeball. The hyena just took action. To be more precise, it was the hyena who saved the anaconda in the face of danger, although the rescue method is a bit rough. When a sudden change occurred in the fallen, the hyena itself was holding the howler in a vigilant state. Therefore, when the anaconda and its huge eyeballs are in danger, the hyena reacts very quickly. He first forcefully pulled off the liquid gold armor on his chest, allowing the strange armor to quickly cover his entire body for protection. Then, almost without thinking, he took 2 steps, flew up, and kicked the anaconda. There was no personal grudge in this kick. It was purely to save people. Given the dangerous situation at that time, there was no way to quickly help the anaconda out of the direct gaze range of its huge pupils. Hyena! You? I don't know whether it was affected by the big eyes or the hyena's kick was too hard. The anaconda struggled for a while, but still couldn't get up, and could only look at it helplessly. On hyenas, be careful. After losing the target of the anaconda, the fallen man who had turned into a pillar of flesh quickly rushed towards the hyena. Snap. Explosive pellets loaded. The hyena's finger tapped steadily on the trigger. Boom. Screamer, the jet-black muzzle spurted out tongues of fire, and the explosive SHLS exploded directly on the meat pillar. In an instant, the explosion of fire lit up the dark coniferous forest. The anaconda, lying aside, had a face full of disbelief. This was the first time she had seen a hyena fighting head-on. The temporary companion who had been with him for 3 days seemed so strange at this moment. Strange protective gear, paired with strange and surprisingly powerful weapons. Who is this guy? Is he really just an ordinary B-level adventurer? Regardless of how surprised the anaconda was when he was seriously injured and fell to the ground. On the hyena's side, the output of the magic gun was very powerful. One of the blasting SHLS shot directly hit the big eye of the pile of meat. The explosion of gunpowder and the scattering of the filling caused considerable damage. That evil big eye was blown to the point where the eye membrane was ruptured and bloodshot, making it even more scarlet and weird. It's a pity that this blow failed to knock down the meat pillar. Eat it! Eat it! Black mist surrounded it, and the voice inside roared loudly. The flesh pillar, which was temporarily stiff after suffering an injury, pounced on the hyena again. But Screamer couldn't fire the second shot right away, because this magic gun needs to be reloaded, one shot at a time. But even so, the hyena did not panic, and there was never much change in expression on that dark face. He raised his left arm slightly, and the streamlined arm guard constructed by liquid gold armor spread out on its own, revealing a brass-colored metal wrist guard underneath. Thunder bracers. This was the trophy obtained by the hyena after he participated in the battle against the storm god and killed the leader of the storm believers on the green coconut rock. As long as you inject magic into this wristband, you can set off a massive storm and thunder. Although, liquid gold armor will limit the wearer's magic power. That is only for mages who are good at magic attacks, like the hyena, which uses a small amount of magic power to trigger the effects of magic props. It is not greatly affected by the weakening of liquid gold armor. Boom! There was a loud noise above the head, and violent lightning twisted and fell like a silver snake dancing wildly. The coniferous forest, which had returned to darkness, was once again illuminated by silvery white lightning. The furthest coverage range of thunder bracers is about 15 meters. However, because the distance between it and the disgusting meat pillar was very close, the hyena did not hit that far, so as not to accidentally injure the anaconda lying not far away. Under the suppression of the thunderstorm, the meat pillar crackled and the scarlet flesh on the surface was fried to black, and its lunging movement was blocked again. Taking advantage of this gap, the hyena skillfully and quickly refilled Howler's ammunition. Snap! The mechanical sound of loading sounded again. The hyena raised his hand, because the distance was close enough. This time the barrel of the magic gun was almost stuck in the one eye of the meat pillar. Boom! The moment the trigger was pulled, the hyena rolled sideways to avoid it. This kind of close explosive output really hurt people and themselves. Under the fire, the powerful explosive impact knocked the hyena away. The right shoulder where the gun but was pressed was instantly numb to the point of loss of intuition, and the entire right hand lost strength and could no longer move. If it weren't for liquid gold armor to buffer the damage, the right hand might be useless. But the shot was effective. Several blasting pills shot out in unison, hitting the big eyes of the meat column. The moment the projectile exploded, the big eye was blown to pieces, and blood and pieces of flesh flew everywhere. The fishy and depraved smell filled the nostrils. After that, the upright pillar of flesh fell softly and turned into a puddle of rotten flesh again. Hoo-ha-hoo. The hyena panted heavily and managed to stand up with his left hand on the ground. He glanced at the rotten flesh remains on the ground with lingering fear, but did not dare to get closer for a detailed inspection. Who knows if this thing will ever stand up again? The hyena drooped his right arm and came to his teammate not far away, who had not been of any help throughout the process. "Are you okay? We need to get out of here." At this time, the anaconda had already sat up from the ground. She raised her eyelids to look at the hyena, but her eyes were so empty that she could only focus. At the same time, her face was sickly flushed, and her breathing was rapid and weak. "You guy, you obviously have such strength, but you are not B-level at all. Right? Is it fun to tease me, anaconda?" The hyena became wary, not because of what the anaconda said, but because of her current state. Her state was so strange. Logically speaking, it was just a kick, so it shouldn't be like this. At this time, the anaconda raised its head, and the flesh and blood on her beautiful and tight wheat-colored face began to squirm. This look was very similar to that of the fallen hyena. I'm hungry. I'm so hungry." Chapter 546, Praying to Dorn. The hyena subconsciously raised his left arm, revealing the thunder bracer. After hesitating for a few tenths of a second, he put his hand down again. Although the anaconda is now similar to the fallen, the degree of flesh and blood is not as severe. The expression on her face was more of pain and confusion, not hopeless madness. "Hyena, I'm so hungry," the anaconda spoke in a nagging voice, seeming to have begun to fall into an unconscious state. "I can't control myself. I really want to bite you. I want to bite off your flesh. Let's go. Let's go." The hyena stood still. In fact, if the anaconda hadn't taken the initiative to ask him to leave, the hyena would have really considered leaving on his own. After all, he had not known each other for too long, and it was only a temporary team relationship. It would be a wise move to escape from this unknown big trouble alone. But since the anaconda took the initiative to ask him to leave, the hyena would feel that it was a bit unloyal to leave him behind. This little brother's character is a bit awkward to begin with. It would be great if the master or the eldest brother were here at this time. The hyena looked at the painful anaconda and felt helpless. He couldn't help but hope that his two parents could be there. Speaking of Brother Dorn. Speaking of his big brother. The hyena suddenly remembered something. Dorn had just given liquid gold armor to the hyena not long ago. When delivering this piece of equipment, he also made an additional statement. "If you encounter any difficult and unsolvable troubles in the future, you can hold items related to me and then recite my name silently, and I will provide you with help according to the situation." Although I feel that the kind of communication method that Big Brother mentioned to provide help is infinitely close to praying to gods. But even so, the hyena is willing to believe it. Ask Brother Dorn for help. The hyena used his left hand that could still move to take off the horn of courage from his waist and squeeze it firmly. This copper-decorated horn was given to him by Dorn a long time ago, together with the set of liquid gold armor he is currently wearing. They can barely be regarded as items related to Dorn. "Brother Dorn, if you can hear me, please help me. Brother Dorn, if you can hear me." The hyena closed his eyes and prayed in his heart with a determined and pious attitude. Time passed minute by minute. Maybe 5 minutes passed. Or 10 minutes passed. The hyena doesn't know. He only knows that when he chants Brother Dorn's name over and over in his heart, he will feel an indescribable sense of peace and intimacy. When he opened his eyes again, the surrounding environment remained unchanged. It is still a quiet and dark coniferous forest, and the cold night wind shakes the shadows of the trees. Underfoot was frozen soil that had been scorched black by gunpowder and thunderstorms, and the rotten flesh of the fallen was not far away. And the anaconda. This A-level female adventurer seems to have fallen into a coma now, and the flesh on her body is squirming much more violently than before. This is not a good sign. "TSK, what should we do?" The hyena felt a little disappointed and anxious. If he couldn't get help from Brother Dorn, the anaconda would probably be in trouble tonight. Just as he was about to step forward to see if he could do anything, a faint mist rose in the dark coniferous forest. It's the extremely familiar white mist. "Brother Dorn?" The hyena was hardened. He knew in his heart that this was a sign of his big brother's appearance. Brother Dorn really heard his call and came to help him. The white mist surged and became thicker, and the rolling white depths seemed to connect to the infinite distance. Immediately afterwards, a figure emerged from the mist and stepped out. It was Dorn. "Brother Dorn." The hyena came up to him, thinking of quickly explaining what happened tonight. Dorn just waved his hand, and then glanced at the pool of fallen people on the ground. "When you prayed just now, I roughly know what happened." The hyena stopped talking, but I paid attention to the wording of what my elder brother just said. "Pray." Behind Dorn, The surging fog had not dissipated. And not long after, another person walked out of it. This person has never been seen by a hyena before. She is a big sister wearing a white veil, and has a strong aura. Not Sister Vivian? The hyena muttered in his heart. In addition, although he could not clearly see the face of this strange elder sister, but she instinctively felt that she could not let her master Greg see her. Otherwise something very tragic might happen. Forget it. You don't have to worry about it. Just know that this guy is here to help. Dorn originally wanted to introduce Miss Plague, but gave up after thinking about it. After hearing this, the Plague on the side immediately protested. What do you mean you don't need to care? You were the one who came here to ask me for help just now. Right. In addition, I noticed that Dorn has become more and more disrespectful to me since you became stronger. I really miss you when we first met. A reserved look. The truth is just as Miss Plague said. The reason why he appeared here was entirely because he accepted Dorn's request. Since becoming a god, Dorn's abilities and skills have been strengthened again. For example, the skill, Leap White Mist, can already be used like any door to shuttle to any designated destination in the Land of Miracles in a short period of time. It took no more than 10 minutes, not even 5 minutes, to reach the sparse coniferous forest near the northern border of Dona from Eden Town. The reason why I came a little late is just because I went to look for Plague on the way. While listening to the hyena's prayer, Dorn got a rough idea of what was going to happen tonight through the inconspicuous mark left on the former's body. Hyena and the others encountered something unusual tonight. Especially the scarlet eye is very similar to the famine, flesh cauldron that Dia encountered. The only difference is that the one the white-haired lowly met earlier had many similar large and small eyes, while the hyena met tonight only had one. Therefore, the pool of degenerates is likely to be directly related to famine. Dorn was afraid that he wouldn't be able to handle it alone, so he pulled up the Plague halfway. The hyena didn't understand what the eldest brother and the unknown eldest sister were arguing about. Just when he was hesitating whether to say something to attract their attention, he suddenly noticed that the elder sister wearing a veil seemed to be looking over lightly. Then, she took a step forward, stretched out her slender palm, and placed it on her right arm, which had lost all feeling. A flash of soft white light, healing and warm. After the light passed, the hyena was surprised to find that he had regained feeling in his arms. This? He tried to move his right arm. Even if he swung his arm widely, there was no pain or numbness. The whole hand was as good as before it was injured. It's incredible. Incredible. Even the best healing potion from Sister Valrona cannot have such an immediate effect. Thank you. The hyena scratched his somewhat messy hair. It takes a little effort, Miss Plague said calmly, with the corners of her vermilion mouth slightly raised under the white gauze that half covered her face. After that, he turned around and walked to Dorn. At this time, Dorn was squatting on the ground to check on the anaconda. From Dorn's perspective, the situation of the anaconda is similar to that of Bishop Dia, with black lines composed of corrupted black energy scattered throughout his body. However, her situation is much better than that of Bimal Loli. These black lines have not yet matured. There are only a few of them, and they are involved in the organs and muscle tissue all over the body. So, the situation is clear now. It's not difficult to save this girl. All you need to do is summon a ball of controlled corrupted black energy just like how you healed Dia at that time, and devour all the black threads in the opponent's body with precision like surgery. Dorn raised his hand and used the fallen authority. A small black mist was generated and penetrated into the anaconda's body. It didn't take long. The black mist came out again and seemed to have expanded slightly compared to the beginning. After the black mist left the anaconda's body, it dissipated on its own. The flesh and blood on the anaconda's body had stopped squirming, and its breathing had become steady. Okay, this girl should be fine. She can recover as soon as she wakes up. Dorn applied an additional dream, then shook his hands and stood up. But Plague moved closer and gestured with 2 fingers. Speaking of which, it seems like 2 of her ribs were broken. It doesn't look like she was injured by the fallen. Miss Plague, who got on the bus halfway, was just a little brother who knew Dorn. She found a degenerate who was suspected to be directly related to famine. She didn't know what exactly happened in the coniferous forest tonight, but Don knew it. He scratched his cheek. Her ribs, this. The hyena next to her added. I kicked her to save her. Plague, who brought up this topic, was obviously stunned for a moment, and then silently stepped forward, using his healing authority to help the anaconda repair 2 broken ribs. While treating me, he also sighed. You kicked me pretty hard. The hyena said nothing. However, there was no expression on his face. It seemed to be a matter of course. On the other hand, his eldest brother Dorn stood aside and covered his face with one hand, silently feeling sad for his little brother. Just now when he was checking to see what happened to the hyena tonight, he saw with his own eyes that the hyena was calm, flying cleanly and kicking the little girl with wheat-colored skin several meters away. I always feel that with my little brother's steel-like judgment and execution ability, it will be difficult for him to find a girlfriend in the future. Under the care of the two gods, the hyena and the anaconda were out of danger, and there was no need for the two young men to stay here anymore. I'll send you to other places first. Hyena, you have a good sleep tonight. This little girl also needs a good rest. The battlefield of Dona and Tazin will not be peaceful during this period of time. You don't want to know closer to here. Dorn gave this instruction to his little brother. His tone was not very harsh, but he could not deny it. After finishing speaking, he summoned the churning white mist, sucking in all the hyenas that had not yet reacted and the sleeping anacondas. The hyena only felt that his field of vision was completely occupied by a vast expanse of white, accompanied by a brief dizziness. After a few seconds, the dizziness and the white fog in front of his eyes dissipated. The hyena calmed down and looked around, realizing that he had left the sparse coniferous forest on the tundra and was in a somewhat familiar wooden corridor. It's not as cold as the tundra. There are candlesticks hanging in the corridor, and one of the wax candles is being lit, emitting a weak and warm light, as well as a faint smell of wax oil, and the anaconda lay beside him. This seems to be the second floor of Sister Fabna's house. The hyena recognized his current location. It is the home of Miss Fabna, the alchemist located in Golden Oak City. As for Golden Oak City, it is very far away from the surrounding areas of Beach City. Hyenas are somewhat accustomed to this. Brother Dorn can always do something unimaginable. However, the strange lady wearing a veil tonight seems to have incomprehensible power. Sure enough, a person as powerful as Brother Dorn. The friends around me all have strengths that cannot be underestimated. Considering that he is also one of the people around, his elder brother, and should not be too weak to embarrass him. The hyena silently vowed that he would redouble his training in the future and leave all other trivial matters behind. The only thing in my eyes is getting stronger. After giving himself an injection of chicken blood, the hyena was thinking about going downstairs to say hello to Fabna and explain the reason for his sudden appearance here. At this moment, this wooden corridor, which was not spacious, was once again filled with white mist. A figure was thrown out of the fog and sat on the ground. It was Gregor, the master whom Hyena had not seen for several days. Hey! Dorn! You guy! Damn it! I haven't even had time to say goodbye to Mrs. Zanoni. Gregor stood up from the ground while rubbing his buttocks, clenching his fists and yelling at the dissipating white mist. Afterwards, he turned around and found that his little apprentice was looking at him helplessly. So he scratched his head and said with a smile, Hey, kid, were you thrown here by your big brother too? It's because I encountered a dangerous person when I was doing the commission. The hyena spoke, trying to explain the somewhat complicated causes and consequences. Wait a minute. We'll talk about those unimportant things later. Gregor interrupted his apprentice's speech. He obviously noticed the anaconda lying on the wooden floor. Tell me first. The one next to you, what happened to the girl? It's like a new friend. Oh, are you finally enlightened? Gregor came forward, looked at the anaconda with the eyes of an old father choosing his daughter-in-law, and then nodded with satisfaction. I'm still a Tazin, but your master. I'm not a stubborn person. Feel free to love. No, I already said no. The hyena was a bit unable to argue. No, be brave. Your eldest brother has helped you tie someone up all the way here. So work hard. Also, hurry up and take the little girl into the house. Are you just going to watch her lying on the floor like this? Gregor showed a pleased and encouraging expression, patted his apprentice on the shoulder, and then ran downstairs. He also recognized this as Fabna's home. Now I have to go downstairs to find Miss Alchemist and quickly explain why I suddenly appeared with my apprentice and a strange girl. Otherwise, you are likely to be bombarded by some unknown agent. The hyena watched helplessly as the unreliable master went downstairs, and then looked back at the anaconda on the ground. It seems like leaving her lying on the ground like this is really not good. The hyena leaned down and planned to carry the anaconda to the bed in the guest room of Miss Fabna's house. Rustling. Clothing rubs. The hyena carefully chose the body parts that would not offend the other party. and carefully picked up the anaconda. The anaconda is not heavy, and is easy to hold. In addition, her body is very elastic and soft. The hyena has never been in such close contact with a girl of the same age. Cough. The little brother's face was a little red for no reason, and he subconsciously covered up his embarrassment with a dry cough. Woo. I don't know if it was affected by the cough, but the anaconda, who was held in a princess's arms, let out a soft squeak, then turned his face sideways, and unconsciously rubbed against the hyena's shoulder. Hyena. After all, the anaconda hadn't woken up yet. He was sleeping soundly, seeming to be having some sweet dream, and smacking his lips softly. That wheat-colored face with an exotic beauty had a vivid blush under the dim light of the wax fire. In fact, if you look at it this way, she is still very beautiful. Chapter 547, Taking the Initiative in the War Between Gods. The sparse coniferous forest is about 12 kilometers away from Beach City in a straight line. Because Dorn casually clicked on an illumination technique, Lindsay's vision was very clear now. The two gods gathered around the pile of rotten flesh transformed from the fallen. Play. That little brother of yours is called Hyena. Right. What's going on with all the equipment on him? He's holding a magic-driven shotgun and wearing armor that looks like nano-powered armor. He's standing there, as if he's in the future. Warrior. His style of painting is different from everyone else. Dorn. It sounds a bit like what you said, but it was just an accident that he was able to get those equipment. Dorn. Speaking of which, should I give myself a godly name? Otherwise, when others pray to me, they will always say things like, Brother Dorn, please help me, which makes me look incompetent. Play. Honorable name? What kind of name do you want? The dawn that penetrates both worlds. You are the Lord of Dreams, the Master of Storms, the source of enlightened whispers, and the guardian of all food and dreams in the world. It sounds interesting. Did you think of it yourself? Make one for me too. The beginning is, a rebel from the evil god's camp? Shut up. You? Dorn and Miss Plague chatted incessantly, but their eyes always fell on the rotten flesh of the fallen. Even after the hyena's last blow, the barrel of the shotgun hit its face, but it didn't seem to be completely dead yet. After waiting long enough, it has the tendency to squirm again and grow evil eyes. What do you think? It looks like it's growing eyes again. Don touched his chin and turned his head to ask. As you guessed at the beginning, this thing is directly related to famine. Plague said this, stretched out his hand in time, and covered the rotten meat on the ground with a white light. If the evil god's eyes grow out, Famine, who currently has no idea where he is hiding, will be able to clearly control the situation of this pile of rotten meat. The mortal body cannot withstand all the divinity that escaped from the star realm in Famine. Therefore, the apocalypse believer with eyes all over his body probably only inherited part of the divinity, and the rest was scattered among these alienated of the fallen. When the flesh cauldron of Famine meets all the alienated and fallen ones, that's when he will officially come to the world. Plague knew a lot about Famine, and quickly deduced the opponent's method of coming to the world this time. According to this idea, all alienated fallen ones, that is, those who can turn into flesh pillars with the eyes of evil gods, can be counted as part of Famine's body. By the way, are there many of these alienated fallen people who carry a small amount of divinity in Famine? Dorn asked as he looked at the puddle of rotten flesh that was imprisoned bit by the white light. The evil god's sister shook her head. There shouldn't be many. Only those apocalypse believers who have listened to the ravings of Famine for a long time have enough physical characteristics to carry his divinity. Moreover, in order to carry the divinity, the corresponding cultist must also have certain qualities. Physical strength is what it takes. After being filtered by these two prerequisites, there may not be many candidates for Famine to choose from. Therefore, people from the Holy See have been operating in this area for a long time, and there have been no reports of encountering alienated degenerates. This wave of analysis is reasonable and well-founded. Dorn nodded with conviction. Speaking of which, there are not many such alienated and degenerate people. The people from the Holy See have not reported any encounters yet. Why did my little brother encounter them when he said they encountered them? I don't know if he is lucky or not. Does this thing have any use value? Dorn looked away from the pile of rotten meat. Of course there is, Plague said in a pleasant tone. He stretched out his hand and stroked the arc of white light covering the pile of rotten flesh. For a moment, the soft white light became even brighter. At the same time, an ethereal, indescribable sense of holiness descended on this coniferous forest. This divine feeling, like the tolling of the evening bell, belongs to the original god. Obviously, it is just the original god who is on the cloud in pure white space, cooperating with Miss Plague. The healing white light and the sense of holiness only lasted for a short while and then disappeared. Okay, Yuan Chu and I have teamed up to mark this pool of alienated fallen ones. We should be able to track them in real time without being discovered by famine. Plague seems to be very satisfied with the mark he made. Before, he and the original teamed up to successfully block famine as perception of Dorn. Therefore, it was possible to leave a mark on this alienated and fallen person without being discovered by the black-robed evil god. If nothing else, this inconspicuous mark will help Dorn find the location where famine is hidden. Dawn, if you find him, will we immediately join forces to attack him? Of course, Miss Plague said seriously. Anyway, the Divine War will happen sooner or later, so why not let us take the initiative? Moreover, the current state of famine is not good, but we are well prepared. The earlier we fight, the better it will be for us. Dawn nodded. This statement still makes sense, based on the comparison of strength between the enemy and ourselves. The best solution for the current survival of the world is to seize the initiative of the Divine War and take advantage of the poor state of famine to annihilate it in one go, to avoid long nights and many dreams. After placing the mark, Plague used the authority of space to hide his and Dorn's existence. This sparse coniferous forest on the frozen soil fell into silence again. The pool of rotten flesh on the ground, which had lost its restraints, finally slowly began to squirm again, turning into a pillar of flesh as tall as a human, from which a huge eyeball was pushed out. The one-eyed evil god opened his pupils and looked around. The coniferous forest was dark, with no living creatures in sight. Only the cold wind blew the needles of the pine trees, making a rustling sound. After observing for a while, the evil god's eyes returned to the depths. Phew! Gulu. The flesh and blood on the flesh column squirmed even more fiercely, and countless granules and tumors grew out, slowly forming the limbs and facial features of the fallen person. Hungry! So hungry! The fallen man's bloodshot pupils stared at the elk carcass that served as bait. It pounced on it, tearing it apart with its hands and teeth, feasting on the fishy venison, making a crunching sound. After the elk was chewed to pieces, the fallen man stood up from the ground with blood on his face. Hungry! So hungry! Its hunger is still unquenchable. In the thick darkness, this humanoid monster got down on all fours, crossed the frozen soil, and continued westward. Chapter 548. The original god wants to micromanage. The Divine War may be about to begin. Dawn went to Jeebus very frequently these days. Spend some time almost every day meeting with the Prime God and Plague. No way. The war between gods is imminent, and the gods of the existing world camp will have to hold more meetings. But meetings were held every day, and no tricks were proposed. The general policy and countermeasures for the Divine War remained unchanged. At most, many details were further formulated and approved. The core of strategy is still to seize the initiative, taking advantage of the current poor state of famine. War was persuaded to quit by a pickled fish, which was a good opportunity to completely ruin it. Dorn and Plague took the initiative to attack, and the original god provided critical assistance at the right time and won in one go. In terms of results, it is best to directly kill one of famine or death. In this way, even if war, which is an uncertain factor, suddenly rises up one day in the future and wants to cause trouble, Apocalypse has lost a big daddy role in the team, and he is destined to only draw his sword and look around in confusion, regretting it. There is no way it could evolve into a threat to the existing world camp. Of course, there is another possibility. Maybe he will never rise up from the war, and will really sleep like that forever. Even if the world is flooded, it has nothing to do with him. In addition, Dorn gained nothing from the meetings these days. He had additional information that the original god had not revealed before, about the plan that had been planning for tens of thousands of years and tried to move the Land of Miracles out of the Matrix. Dawn made an important speech at today's internal meeting. By the way, isn't the primeval god planning to move the Land of Miracles out of the Matrix and escape to the public network of the Earth? That way, people in the blue space will no longer be able to attack here. And you, the primeval god, no longer need to be tied to the cloud. After repairing the loopholes, you can walk around the world at will. So, what I mean is, since that plan will be realized soon, why don't we wait and delay until the plan is realized? And Yuan Chu can personally go out and fully participate in the God War. By then, won't we be stable? When? Regarding Don's constructive opinion, Yuan just shook his head. Then, for the first time, the specific time for completion of the wandering public network plan was given. It will probably take several hundred years. Compared with the time span of tens of thousands of years of planning, a few hundred years can indeed be regarded as the end of the plan. And it is indeed soon. But this kind of vastness will definitely not be able to keep up with this divine battle. If it drags on for hundreds of years, it is estimated that both famine and death will come to the holy city. So this time the divine war is about to break out. Only Dorn and Plague will be the main force. The small meeting between the three gods ended. Plague, as usual, I asked for Alice's bedtime reading from Dawn, entered the story world, and spent warm parent-child time with the Dragon Lady. Perhaps because of the upcoming God War, Miss Plague has spent significantly more time with Alice recently. Above the clouds, only the two gods Dorn and the original were left. At this time, Dawn suddenly thought of something and asked without too much worry. By the way, there is actually something I have always been curious about. About Venus, you asked? The original god replied calmly while repairing the twisted gaps and loopholes. That's right. You said that your appearance is no different from Venus outside. In other words, she looks like she is in her early 20s on Earth. Right? So, was this incredible data implantation in the land of miracles done by herself? Although I don't know much about cutting-edge data technology, I always feel that a girl of about 20 years old can fight against the blue on her own. Such a huge thing as space, this kind of thing is a bit hard to imagine. Venus has extraordinary talent in data programming. Yuan seemed to hesitate for a moment, but his expression was still unclear on his face, hidden by the clouds. As for the rest, I may have the opportunity to tell you in the future. It seems that this girl creator does not want to explore this issue in depth. So Dawn wisely stopped asking. The two gods were silent for a while. This time it was the original god who spoke first. By the way, when the war between gods begins, I need your help. Huh? Dawn showed a confused expression. What does this mean? Haven't you been assisting the original camp in fighting the god war? It's not this general. It needs to be more specific. The original god shook his head slightly. I need you to completely obey my command at a certain moment. But what you said is very general. Dorn was even more confused. He tried hard to understand. Do you mean that during the battle between gods, you want to remotely microcontrol my actions? Similar to the machine gunner moving 5 meters to the left. Well, that's more or less it. You'll know when the time comes. Yuan should continue to repair the cracks in the sky without looking back. Dawn, I really admitted it. This kind of confusing request. Dawn would definitely not let it be said so lightly, and then flipped over. But then, no matter how Dorn asked, the original god did not give a detailed explanation. The righteous god of the land of miracles has always been like this. It seems that there are still many things that are hidden in his heart, and he is not willing to reveal them easily to his two Alliance teammates. That night, Dorn stepped through the white fog and returned to Eden Town, to the second floor of the Wishing Restaurant. Speaking of which, as the construction of the new block is slowly completed, the old employees in the restaurant have moved there. The new block has brand new staff quarters. Veteran employees like Gonzalez, Amy, Fat Fox, Bearclaw, Hannah, and Elsa, who hold certain shares in the Food City, are even assigned resettlement houses. Everyone has a bright future. However, Dawn and Vivian have never forgotten their original intentions and still live on the second floor of the Wishing Restaurant. Since store manager Gonzalez moved out, the layout of the second floor has undergone significant changes. All the rooms have been opened up and merged into 2 large ones. One belongs to Dorn, and the other belongs to Vivian. The furniture, furnishings, and even the decoration in the room have been updated several times. Overall, it is warm and comfortable, and is deeply loved by Dawn. After standing in the corridor for a while, Dawn's eyes fell on the doorknob of Vivian's room. After struggling for a while, he finally shook his head. Forget it. It's too late now. Vivian is probably asleep. Squeak. Dawn opened the door to his room, but he found Miss Goblin sitting on the bed in her room, looking out the window in a daze. The moonlight is nice tonight. The bright white moonlight reflected on Vivian's fair skin and long silver hair, making her look as beautiful as a painting. Anyone who appreciates beauty will not have the heart to destroy this composition. But because she heard the door opening, Vivian, who was sitting on the bed in a daze, turned her head. After seeing Dorn, those beautiful lake blue eyes were filled with joy and unconcealable love. "You're back, Dawn!" Vivian raised her head slightly, shook her silver hair, and showed a gentle smile. Chapter 549. Good night, Dorn. In Dawn's impression, it seems that since Miss Fafner came to Eton last time, Vivian's frequency of taking the initiative to come to her room at night has increased. But every time I come here, I hesitate, say a few words, and then run out with a red face. Tonight, maybe it will be the same? I couldn't sleep, so I wanted to come and talk to you. Then when I got to your room, I realized you weren't there, so I waited for you here. Vivian opened her mouth to explain why she appeared in Dorn's room. Dawn just nodded and said nothing. He walked to the bed and sat down. He naturally took Miss Goblin's hand that was leaning against the edge of the bed, after returning from the small meeting among the gods. Seeing Vivian made him feel inexplicably at ease. Dawn is now suddenly able to understand the theory of human nature and divinity that Plague once talked about. If you remain a god for too long, your divinity will surpass your humanity. It will fall into nothingness and go to extremes. War is an example. And if there is a little person or thing left in the world that represents one's own humanity, it may be able to help a god stay awake. Dawn and Vivian sat silently facing the bright moonlight. The atmosphere was neither awkward nor ambiguous. It was just peaceful and extremely reassuring. After a while, the elf lady spoke first. Dorn, will the war between gods begin soon? Vivian is the only person in the entire food city who knows about things related to the god war. But she never asked too much about matters involving the gods. And Dorn didn't take the initiative to talk about it. Not asking no doesn't mean you don't care. Yeah. Dawn hesitated a little, but finally nodded. How do you know? Then, he unconsciously held the other person's hand tighter. Vivian chuckled softly. Because you are still the same. Even if you are now, well, even now, you are still the same. You can't hide things in your heart, and you will write down everything you have on your mind. Face. Is there any? Dawn doesn't think he is a person who can't hide his thoughts. To a certain extent, after experiencing so many things in the land of miracles, my city seems to have been deeply tempered. The only thing to blame is Vivian. She is too sharp. In other words, she knew Dorn too well. However, having someone by your side who fully understands you is not a bad thing. Dorn. Vivian spoke again. She seemed to have a lot to say tonight. I can't accompany you to the God War, although I really want to. I know that with my strength, going will only drag you down. Therefore, I will wait for you in Eton Town like before. Come back. Yeah. Dawn didn't know how to respond. He was silent for a while, and just nodded. You will come back. Right. Miss Goblin said this, while turning her face sideways, staring out the window. The bright moonlight caught in her eyes. Dawn was about to agree, but when the words came to his lips, he felt unable to speak. This time, it's different from before. This is the grandest adventure Dorn has undertaken since he was born in the land of miracles. The stakes are high. It is the survival or destruction of this entire world. It seems that there is no way to say this kind of thing easily. So Dawn was tangled in his heart again. Tangled over and over again. And finally he said something strangely. What if I can't come back? As soon as the words came out of his mouth, he began to regret them. Tonight's heart-to-heart talk was supposed to be to appease Vivian. But wouldn't saying something like this, which represented her inner uneasiness, only cause her more trouble? At this time, you should confidently pat your chest and say things like, I can definitely do it. I am really good, to make Vivian feel completely at ease. Right? Dorn was just beginning to feel annoyed. But after hearing what he said, Miss Goblin's reaction was completely different from what he had imagined. I saw Vivian turning back. Her lake blue eyes were calm and gentle, as if she could really see through all of Dawn's thoughts at this moment. Then she smiled. It's okay, Dawn. As I said, you should rely on me more. Even if I can't help much, I am willing to listen to your worries and share your uneasiness. The two of us together, it's better to bear and face these negative emotions than to digest them alone. This is the only thing I can do for you, Vivian. Dorn felt that his extremely strong divine heart was beating several beats faster at this moment. Miss Goblin continued. I'll support you in everything you do. So, it really doesn't matter. Dawn. This time, it's different from before, isn't it? The worst case scenario, you really don't come back. I will accompany you to die. Together with this world. With you. I don't need to wait forever alone. It's a bit of a pity and a pity. I haven't been by your side enough. And maybe I will never be enough. There are still many things I want to do with you. Remember? I said that before I met you. I didn't like this world because it had nothing to do with me. But now, I gradually realized that this world is very cute. There are many beautiful and memorable things in this world. For example, the moon outside the window tonight is very beautiful. I can accept the worst ending. And the most I can do is disappear with you. But if possible, I hope you can create a good ending. Like the brave and unique little pig in the story. You said. It can also have a good ending. So, keep going. Dorn. Do your best to let this world continue to exist. I beg you. Vivi and Lu talked a lot one after another. During the time when Dorn was preparing for the war between gods. She probably kept these words in her heart for a long time. Dawn just listened silently. The uneasiness and anxiety that had accumulated in my heart during this period seemed to be swept away. And they were dissolved in this bright moonlit night. Speaking of which, it seems that every time before a tough battle, Vivian will use her own way to relieve Dorn's pressure. It's no wonder that after he became a god, Miss Goblin would become the sustenance of his humanity. After a moment of silence, Dorn stretched out the little finger of his right hand towards Wei Weian. Wait until I come back. This is to pull the hook. Vivian smiled knowingly and stretched out the little finger of her right hand. The tail fingers hooked together. This was the first time they had sworn by hooking up. Dorn will always do what Logwago said. So, I will wait for you here. At the end of this small ceremony that belonged only to the two of them in this world, Vivian stood up from the bed and seemed to want to go back to her room. But just after taking a small step, she turned back and leaned down a little boldly. She gently held Dawn's face, leaned close, and kissed her on the lips. After a while, the two of them separated slightly breathing. Well then, good night, Dawn. Chapter 550, Famine is Coming. Early the next morning, Dorn left his room feeling refreshed. Last night, Vivian kissed him, said good night to him, and then went back to her room. However, when he left the room, he blushed again and added hesitantly, when Dorn comes back this time, I hope to do many things that you have never done before. Anything. It feels like Vivian has become confused in some aspects since Valrona came last time. Anyway, it's just a little different from before. The alchemist lady from Golden Oak City may have taught her some great theoretical knowledge. Today, as usual, I should meet with the original and Plague, then wait for the divine war to come. After this battle, we will go back to our hometown and get married. Standing at the door of the room, Dorn realized that he had just set a huge flag, and couldn't help but smile and shake his head. However, marrying the fairy lady is something that must be done. This is a very important ceremony. A real man shouldn't be flagged down like this. Isn't he just a little apocalypse evil god? If you want to destroy this world, don't agree. Do them. The tundra in the eastern part of the Tazan Empire. This was the battlefield where Tazan and Dona fought head-on. Several months have passed since that brutal meat grinder frontal battle. On this piece of frozen soil, you can still see faded and mottled bloodstains, as well as many unburied bones. Because of the cold weather, most of the corpses here have not completely decomposed. Normally no living person would approach such a brutal battlefield site. But today is different. You can see a man in black, hesitating on the frozen soil. His steps were very slow, and his pace was a bit weird. Every time he took a step, his body covered by black clothes would shake strangely, like a piece of rotten pudding. Bishop Dia of the original Holy See used a scene retrospective in the destroyed village east of Tazan. In the retrospective images, I have seen this person before. He is the leader of the black-clad cultists, the human flesh cauldron ordered by Famine. However, his body has expanded abnormally twice now, and there is no younger brother following him. Except for the clothes, there is nothing similar to the original retrospective image. This strange existence, which may no longer be called a human, was just walking staggeringly on the tundra covered with remains. When he reached the center of the battlefield, the man in black stopped. From the east and southeast, something was approaching quickly. They were two human monsters lying on all fours. No clothes or other organs could be seen on their bodies. Only scarlet squirming flesh. In the middle of their bodies, a huge sarcoma was pushed out, and then evolved into a scarlet evil god. People, they crawled across the battlefield. The squirming and twisted flesh and blood on the body would swell from time to time, wrapping around the corpse of a soldier along the way, and a piece of whitish carrion would be pulled from it and assimilated. These two humanoid monsters are very similar to the alienated fallen person that the hyena and anaconda encountered before on the battlefield. Three strange and infiltrating creatures continued to approach each other. When the distance got closer, black mist began to spread from their bodies, and an ominous, filthy, and crazy aura ran rampant in the mist. Hungry! Depraved ravings kept coming from it. Finally, the three monsters came to each other, and the black mist became thicker and thicker. I saw that the swollen man in black pulled out a big mouth from his abdomen, rolled his tongue, and brought one of the alienated degenerates into the mouth. Crunch! There was a horrible, blood-curdling chewing sound. Hungry! So hungry! The murmurs in the surrounding mist seemed to become more and more excited at this moment. Gulu, Gulu. While chewing the alienated fallen, scarlet flesh and blood overflowed from the man in black's body. You can see that these squirming flesh are covered with large or small scarlet eyeballs. The rolling of the eyeballs is enough to make one's hair stand on end with fear. Crunch! An alienated fallen one was quickly chewed up. The man in black seems to have more eyeballs on his body, and the bloody mouth on his abdomen has become a bit larger and more ferocious. Next, it began to open its mouth again, curling its tongue to lead an alienated fallen person. This degenerate did not resist the whole process. Whether he saw his kind being eaten or it was his turn to be eaten, he always accepted it happily. It's as if it and the men in black are originally one. The process of eating it is nothing more than assimilating it back into its mother body and turning it back into a part of the body. In fact, this is the method used by famine to break free from the shackles of the star realm and come to the human world. First, use the Pope of the Apocalypse religion, who has the highest status, the strongest strength, and who has listened to his ravings for the longest time and the most, as the main meat cauldron. Bring most of the Godhead to the man in black, Pope. But mortal bodies are still weak after all. The other parts of the Pope's Godhead that his body could not bear were broken into pieces and descended piecemeal to other powerful believers who had listened to his ravings around the world. After the body of the Pope of the Apocalypse religion has devoured enough alienated fallen people, famine will officially come to the world. As for the Pope and those powerful believers, according to their interpretation and understanding of the doctrine, it is probably that when the apocalypse came, they became part of the greatest existence and received eternal salvation at the end of the world. But in fact, what famine needs is just to use their bodies as vehicles for their godhood. And these crazy believers, as early as the moment when the famine God had possessed them, their bodies and souls were extinguished and they ceased to exist, turning into a pile of squirming rotten flesh. The two alienated degenerates were devoured and assimilated, and the size of the man in black expanded a bit. The big mouth in his abdomen opened, and he licked the corners of his mouth and body with his long tongue. Come on! Come again! The man in black is getting ready to move again. Wow! At this time, several hoarse crows of crows came from the sky. On this battlefield site, there were originally many scavenging crows and rats, gnawing at the corpses of the soldiers. However, after the men in black approached, these living creatures no longer dared to show up. The crow that dares to approach here at this time is definitely not just a crow. In the hazy gray sky, a group of crows with green feathers and scarlet pupils landed. Chapter 551. The God War begins. Crows with red eyes and green feathers swooped down from the gray sky. Halfway down, they entered a very strange state. They didn't even flap their wings and just hovered. Then, they began to twist and intertwine in a hideous and chaotic manner until no specific shape could be seen. Those pale green feathers fell to the ground. The twisted crows continued to merge, and soon turned into a man wearing a robe. This is of course the Green Crow Man. Oh, no. The Green Crow Man at this time has changed both in appearance and gender. In Adele's nightmare, she appeared as a middle-aged man. Later, when he was feeding pigeons with a flock of crows in an unknown square, he transformed into a handsome young man with blonde hair. But this time when she appeared, she became a woman. A middle-aged woman with freckles, a flat nose, and an ordinary appearance. The appearance of Green Crow Man, or Green Crow Woman, seems to be able to change at any time. You're here! The Pope in black opened the big mouth on his abdomen and spat out chaotic human words. It seems you are recovering well. Death. The words were intermittent and could only be heard clearly. When Green Crow Man faced Adele more than 10 years ago, he once said, "He is the clone of Death. But one day in the future, he will become Death itself." Now it seems that someday in the future has arrived. The large-scale battle that broke out between Dona and Tazan not only gave Famine the opportunity to brew a major disaster, but also brought a large number of casualties. This is true whether it is the frontal battlefield or the rear. These deaths also strengthen the power of the last apocalypse evil god, Death. But you don't look too good. You've lost a lot of your divine power. It's far inferior to the state you had in the last battle between gods. The ordinary-looking middle-aged woman spoke like this. Her tone was so calm and emotionless, like a piece of biting ice. This is a necessary price. The black-clothed pope, or rather the Famine, godhead in his body, continued. Death did not continue this topic. He bent down casually, picked up his own green crow feather on the ground and played with it. So, War didn't come to answer your call. Huh? Famine was very angry when he mentioned the red-robed evil god who instigated the war between the two empires in the Land of Miracles and kicked off the war between gods. But it seemed that he had no intention of ending up personally. That coward. He is hiding in the dream and refuses to come out. The crimson space of war can only be entered by those who can construct a boundless dream. If this condition is not met, not even the gods can enter. Currently, apart from the red-robed evil god himself, the only one who can come and go freely there seems to be the newly promoted sixth god Dorn. Therefore, if the war is ruined and unwilling to come out, Famine and Death will not be able to do anything to him. After the failure of the last divine war and Plague betraying us, War became a little disheartened. Death still had no mood swings, and his tone was deathly calm. There are currently only two gods from the world-destroying camp in the Land of Miracles. Although they haven't seen each other for a long time, they don't seem to have much to say after their reunion. After a brief conversation, everyone fell into silence. Not long after, the ruins of the battlefield filled with corpses started to move again, and something was approaching quickly, or those alienated and fallen ones controlled by Famine. This time there were still two, one crawling from the north and the other from the east. The east side is the direction where the Dona Empire is located. Famine began to devour these two fallen ones as usual, assimilating them into its own nutrients. Hungry, so hungry! Along with the creepy chewing sounds, murmurs and murmurs lingered in the black air around him. Death stood quietly on the side, watching Famine eat. The green robe on his body moved automatically without any wind. The face of that ordinary middle-aged woman had no expression, but she seemed to be thinking about something. Famine, after eating the one from the north, his loose body swelled a bit more. The number of eyes in his flesh and blood increased again, and his bloody mouth became more and more ferocious. There was a sticky squirming and crashing sound from the scarlet flesh. Next, he used his tongue to roll the fallen man from the direction of Dona into his mouth. This time, things were a little different. After just 2 bites, Famine's big mouth stopped moving, and spat out the rotten meat in his mouth with great disgust. He probably tasted something, noticed something, and became extremely angry. Damn, original! The flesh and blood of this alienated fallen person from the east has the smell of the original god and Plague. It has been manipulated. At this time, a white light with healing power flashed across this desolate and cold tundra battlefield. After the light passed, a young woman with a graceful figure, wearing a white dress and a white veil, stood gracefully behind the piles of corpses. Famine! Long time no see. Well, and Death! You chose a good look today. Afterwards, another raging white mist surged up. In the depths of the white mist, which seemed to be connected to the infinite distance, a young man with black hair and black eyes, a tall figure, and a gentlemanly demeanor stepped out of the mist. They are naturally Plague and Dorn. The fallen one coming from the direction of Dona was the same hyena they encountered before. It was marked by Miss Plague and the original god. The righteous gods of the surviving world camp can see the real-time location of this fallen person at any time. Instead of letting Famine and the others initiate a divine war, it's better to take the initiative in the divine war yourself. This is the policy and guideline for dealing with the war between gods clearly stated by the 3 righteous gods. And Dorn and Plague as present on the battlefield means that the battle of gods has begun. After personally entering the battlefield, Dorn believed that the chances of winning this divine battle were quite high. The position of the tampered fallen one can be controlled in real time. So he and Plague have been lurking around this battlefield. During this period, Miss Plague's space authority was used as a cover, so that she would not be discovered immediately. Everything that happened just now was seen by Dorn from a distance. After eating the first two fallen, Famine murmured the words, "Come soon! Come again!" In addition, after Dorn became a god, he already had the ability to perceive at the god level. He can preliminarily analyze the general state of the current famine. The black-robed evil god was not in good condition, and he was caught red-handed. In order to escape from the confinement under the starry sky, Famine lost part of his godhood and authority, and only about 3/4 of his strength escaped to the human world. And these 3/4 have been divided again, part of which remains in the Pope of the Apocalypse, and the other part is scattered in the powerful believers. That is, those alienated and fallen ones. Famine must continuously eat and assimilate the designated fallen ones in order to regain its own power, and then use the flesh and blood of these believers to come to the world. But currently, it seems that Famine, as fused and assimilated flesh and blood are not strong enough to complete the Advent ritual. In other words, he has not yet eaten a sufficient number of alienated fallen ones, and is not yet able to fully descend into the human world. He does not even have 3/4 of the strength he had during the last divine war. This wave took advantage of his illness to kill him, and then started fighting, and that was it. "Traitor!" Famine, which was shaking violently like a rotten and smelly pudding, roared angrily, ignoring Dorn's appearance, and turned its fat and loose flesh towards Plague. "I would rather you call me the savior of the land of miracles." The evil god's sister was as usual. Her tone was frivolous and casual. "The land of miracles? It's just a piece of shameless foreign code, devouring the resources of the Matrix. It's a dirty rat. A despicable bug. It's an error in itself and shouldn't exist. It must be corrected." The big mouth in Famine, as abdomen continued to speak vaguely and chaotically, stubbornly and stubbornly. But in the black mist surrounding him, there were angry shouts that matched his words. "Ah! Yes! Yes!" Plague spread his hands indifferently. "But even rats and bugs have a need to survive since they were born. You stand on the side of the blue space in the outside world, and you want to destroy the land of miracles, an implant program that embezzles Matrix resources, even at the expense of yourself. If you don't change your original intention, think about it from another perspective, from an outside perspective. It's even a little bit noble and worthy of praise. As for me, I have long joined the rat side who are eager to survive. In order to survive, we steal the computing resources you have at hand. And in order to protect the resources at hand, you can also choose to kill us rats. Everyone, it's all about ability." Plague is very open-minded about this issue, and it may be that it really doesn't matter. Anyway, it is not affected by Famine at all, the source of disputes between the land of miracles and the blue space outside. It is a high-dimensional world, and the contradiction and conflict between the birth and the low-dimensional world in high-dimensional civilization cannot be explained clearly in a few words. The sentence, "Everyone depends on his ability," is simple and crude. Dorn on the side did not pay too much attention to the verbal dispute between Plague and Famine, but always maintained preparations for battle. He knew very well that scolding enemies to death through verbal disputes would not happen here. In the final analysis, the world-sustaining camp and the world-destroying camp are going to fight. In addition, Dorn is still wary of Death's movements. The green-robed evil god is the one with the least information among the 4 apocalypses. At this moment, the apocalypse evil god, who was originally Academician Sushiyu, was as silent as Dorn. But the oppressive force on his body was much stronger than Plague and the incomplete state of Famine. This is definitely a tough opponent. Amid Dorn's careful vigilance, Death suddenly made a move. His figure quickly disappeared, and the ordinary middle-aged female face suddenly became blurred and invisible. At the same time, the green robe was automatically untied. There was no body under the green robe, only a chaotic, illusory smoke-like polymer. This smoky polymer, with a slightly pale green color, quickly rose up and became like a tall tower. "Death, die, die!" There were numerous and complex voices, as if they were tens of thousands of people, echoing from it. The voices were male and female, old and young, but they were all cold and without any emotion. When added together, they looked very strange. Immediately afterwards, expressionless faces were outlined in the smoke-like tower, and the facial features of each face were clearly distinguishable. Faces appeared and disappeared. Mouths opened to shout. Death, die, die. If you look carefully, you can find that the three faces of a middle-aged man, a handsome young man, and an ordinary woman used by Green Crow Man are also mixed in these smoke faces. Even Dorn, who possesses the destroying eyes of delusion, found two somewhat familiar faces. The two faces are both male, one old, one young. Their facial features are somewhat similar to the Vatican's pale sword-bearer, Adele. Therefore, Don immediately recalled where he had seen them. In Miss Swordholder's nightmare. They are the father and son of the Reynolds family, who were killed by the Green Crow Man. That is, Adele's father and brother. Suddenly, Dorn understood how Death got these faces. The souls of those killed by Death or Death Clone will be swallowed by him and become part of him. And Death can use the souls of these victims at will and change into their appearance. This is why the image of the Green Crow Man keeps changing. In addition, with the help of the god's perception, Dorn can also quickly distinguish what this smoky tower of death is. He is the divine form of death. It is a powerful fighting posture that a god can only display after he has fully descended into the human world. To put it simply, it is what death looks like after he becomes a god. The human form in green robes is just an external appearance evolved by death. This smoky tower of death is his most authentic appearance. Of course, Dorn had mastered this information during the previous meeting with the primeval and plague, so there was no big surprise. However, death suddenly reveals its true form, which means that he is tired of hearing the dialectics of famine and plague, and is ready to directly attack and start a fight. Therefore, Dorn saw the bright red blood strip on Death's head. The blood volume is 13.68 million. This is the longest and most outrageous amount of blood that Dorn has ever seen so far. Is this the strength of AT1 level god? Looking at the long blood tank on the Tower of Death. Even if Dorn was fully prepared, he couldn't help but feel a little numb. Chapter 552, This Old Bastard. Blanch him. The blood volume of Death is 13.68 million. The three edible beast demigods, Storm God, Red Fish, and Black Snake, who were previously conquered, had health levels ranging from hundreds of thousands to hundreds of thousands respectively. After Dorn ate their spiritual flesh and officially became a god through 3 stages, his blood volume increased exponentially, reaching more than 4 million points. The gap between a true god and a demigod is such a big one. Although demigods are called demigods, the gap between them and gods is not half, but a qualitative change. Although Dorn became a god, as Plague said, he ascended to god through cramming, and his strength was at the bottom among the 6 gods. It feels like the prime god at the top is the ceiling, and Dorn at the end is the sewer. Therefore, although they are both gods, the gap between gods is really wider than the gap between humans and main boars. Dorn's strength in terms of death in the T1 column, in terms of health alone, is only a fraction of others. At the same time that death turned into a tower of terrifying smoke, the 2 gods, Plague and Famine, also started to fight. Even though they were teammates a long time ago, they are now in a perpetually hostile relationship, and it would be useless to talk about it. Like Death, Plague also showed his godly attitude for the first time. He had never done this before when he accompanied Dorn to fight the Black Snake. It can be seen that from the beginning of the Divine War, the gods on both sides spared no effort to fight each other to the death. Actually, I hate being like this. The white veil and skirt faded from Plague's body. When the veil is removed, her face can be glimpsed. That face is the same as that of Miss Lian Wan on Earth. A royal sister's face with the temperament of an urban beauty. But this beautiful face was only revealed for a moment. And it was fleeting. It was replaced by a skeleton with white bones. And the dark eye holes were flashing with a blue and gloomy soul fire light. Plague, the skin and flesh under the white skirt are completely invisible. Only a skeleton. Along with his movements, his bones and joints made jittery sounds. In addition, there was some disgusting and thick festering pus, which emerged at his feet like a fountain, full of disaster and illness. This Plague skeleton is the divine form of Plague. No wonder Miss Plague said that she didn't like to be like this. After Plague reveals the true form of the god, there is also a health bar on the top of its head, which is the green blood bar of friendly units. The blood volume is 9.28 million points. The postures of these evil gods are really weirder than the last. In comparison, the way I activate Demon Transformation and Nirvana Touch is really refreshing. Dorn was actually not sure whether he had the so-called godly attitude when he had just become a god. But his most powerful combat state is indeed when he transforms into a goat-horned demon with bat wings. And then 8 octopus tentacles extend from his back. In order to cater for the battle, Dorn transformed into a demonic form that caused people to lose their sanity. Just as he was preparing to fight with Plague, the black-robed Famine also quickly changed his body shape. His black robe disappeared, and his loose scarlet flesh lost its restraints, rolling out like a wave. Phew! Gulu. The flesh and blood squirmed in a sticky manner. And then, these shapeless flesh and blood began to aggregate, like a large piece of ugly-colored plasticine being kneaded by invisible hands. Eventually, the flesh and blood of Famine began to appear as a bloated and huge human figure, with its body densely covered with vicious scarlet eyes, and a shocking gash in its fat belly. It was a mouth, extremely ferocious, a greedy mouth that could never be satisfied. This kind of meat mountain, gluttonous food, and the appearance of some indescribable elements are the posture of the god of Famine. The blood volume on the top of his head is over 10 million. It is higher than Plague, which is currently in good condition. This old cunt. Blanchett! The 8 tentacles on Dorn's back contracted unconsciously, and Famine suddenly revealed the true form of the god, which was completely unexpected by him. When he first saw Famine, Don's judgment of his status was, it has not swallowed enough alienated fallen ones. The flesh and blood on its body is not strong enough. It has not completed the divine descent, and its strength has shrunk greatly. Coupled with Famine's words of, come soon, come again, just now, it further confirmed Don's conjecture. But all judgments collapsed the moment Famine turned into a mountain of hungry meat. The divine posture is a powerful combat posture that can only be displayed after a god has fully descended into the human world. In other words, Famine, this old bastard, has already devoured enough alienated fallen people to achieve the prerequisite for the descent of the gods. Everything he did before was just a deliberate show of weakness. Just a feint. This kind of behavior may be intentional, deliberately to guard against the evil of the survival world camp, and to set up a trap by the way. It may also be unintentional. But Famine, an evil god who has lived for millions of years, subconsciously hid his secret. In addition, after facing the hungry meat mountain form of Famine, Dorn also discovered through intuitive divine induction, this old sinister evil god may have started hiding things before he escaped from the starry sky and the black snake fell. The optimistic prediction within the survival world camp is that even if Famine successfully escapes to the human world and completes the divine descent, it will probably only retain about 3/4 of its strength. But after seeing Famine as true form, Dorn was belatedly aware of it. The black-robed evil god now definitely retains more than 3/4 of his strength, but should be 4/5, or even 9/10 possible. No wonder that under the starry sky, Famine faced Plague and the original god's combined attack skills without even resisting. Fortunately, when Famine was devouring the first 2 fallen ones just now, I didn't have the confidence to suddenly attack him before he had completed his divine surrender. Otherwise, I would definitely be the one who suffered. Don was a little scared. Let's look at our teammate Miss Plague, who is fighting side by side, faced with Famine as sudden appearance of a god and its unreserved true strength. Plague, which had turned into a diseased skeleton, did not seem to be too surprised. Maybe this was what he expected. If you think about it more carefully, maybe this divine war that broke out without any preparation was not out of the control of any of the gods on both sides except Dorn. There may be a layer-by-layer psychological game behind this. Maybe Famine knew that Yuan Chu and Plague were tampering with an alienated fallen person, and they just deliberately showed weakness and used their tricks to attract the alliance of surviving worlds to take the bait. Maybe the original and Plague also predicted Famine in their hearts, but they thought that following the fallen to find Famine would be the best time to start the war. Postponing it later would only lead to destruction. More preparation time for the World League. So why don't you just take advantage of the situation? The games come and go, and all the conspiracies turn into tacit conspiracy. It has become inevitable for both sides to have a divine war at this point in time today. So they both take it calmly. You really have to be careful when dealing with these old people who are alive and well. Don didn't know if the, I understand, thoughts he had in his mind just now were due to overthinking. But it doesn't all matter, since the two sides have already opened up their posture. It is impossible to ask everyone to stop and ask about their respective mental processes. Just hit and that's it. In the current frontal battlefield, Dorn is at a disadvantage based on its strength on paper. Death is undoubtedly the strongest in the game. As for Famine, whose godhead is damaged but has hidden tricks. It is conservatively estimated that it will be at least 50 to 50 equal to Plague. Or even better than Plague. Dorn just has nothing to say. Fortunately, there is also a primordial god on the side of the surviving world camp. Although this girl's creator body is limited, she can only stay on the clouds to repair loopholes. But in the gap between fixing loopholes, it is still possible to free up your hands and provide remote assistance once or twice. The original remote assistance was the last resort for Dorn and Plague. As long as we can seize the opportunity of these two waves, the battle between gods can still be won. The same is true for Famine and Death. As long as they can survive these two waves of initial attacks, they still have a good chance of winning. Clang. The harsh friction sound of bronze metal resounded. One of the Nirvana touches on Dorn's back presented the most powerful tool he had at hand, the soul-inducing lantern. This bronze lantern can exorcise the souls of 3 demigod beasts, and Dorn holds their respective powers, which can increase their abilities. Therefore, even if it is a battle conflict at the level of gods, the bronze lantern is a very practical prop with good combat effectiveness. Dorn had made some mental calculations before about whether God War should take out this item and use it. After all, the essential owner of this thing should be Death. Who knows if using this thing to deal with Death will cause any trouble. However, this concern was dispelled by Yuanchu during a small meeting of gods. Anyway, what the girl creator meant was that after his transformation, the soul-inducing lantern was very reliable and could be used casually, and Death had no control at all. The most powerful god in the world has made such a promise. So Duoin naturally had no choice but to believe it. Clang 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 clang. The ancient bronze lantern continued to sway, and the continuous sound of metal friction was harsh and strange, as if it carried the power of vague life and death. Immediately afterwards, a miserable green light suddenly lit up. The 3 souls imprisoned in the lantern's shade began to rise. In the end, he broke away from the shackles of the lantern and appeared on this desolate frozen battlefield. The storm god's soul is an illusory azure, and the red fish is an elusive crimson. There is also the black snake whose body was killed in the explosion, but whose soul was captured by the lantern, showing a black color as thick as paint. The souls of 3 different colors expanded rapidly, and in an instant, they returned to the same size as their previous bodies. The upper body of the storm god is tens of meters high, and the illusory tentacles are longer than the upper body, like a giant pillar that can lift the world apart. The azure aura around it rippled like waves. Dark clouds hovered around the soul, and from time to time, lightning exploded in the clouds. On the tundra battlefield, a storm is brewing. The confinement of the red fish's soul was lifted, and the illusory figure reached the point where it could block the sky and the sun, almost occupying the entire visible hazy sky. It emits a high-pitched and melodious whale song, and as it swims and breathes in the air, crimson with tiny cyclones constantly overflows. The dreamy and magnificent red color contains layers upon layers of bizarre dream silhouettes. There are also black snakes like Jormungandr, whose monstrous black figures roll and reveal scarlet snake messages. Black mist wrapped around it, full of depravity and ominous atmosphere. For soul-inducing lantern to function, Famine and Death are not too extreme. When the old Ian Famine was under the stars, he had seen Dorn use this item, but he didn't seem to associate this item with death. In fact, if you think about it, you can understand that in this world, the authority of gods does not have absolute meaning and uniqueness. Just like war has the power of dreams, Dorn also has it. Famine has the power of corruption and gibbering, and Dorn also has it. So, it's quite reasonable for Dorn to be able to use an item with the power of death and soul, isn't it? In addition, the soul-inducing lantern does not seem to be a signature prop of death. Otherwise the Green Crow Man would not have stuffed this thing into Infang's coffin for hundreds of years just to satisfy his own evil taste. However, it is understandable that Famine did not respond, but Death remained silent while watching his props being hacked by others, and he didn't know why. Let's go! Dorn took command of the battle and led the charge. According to the original plan, as soon as the Divine War begins, he will cooperate with Plague and launch a fierce attack on the incomplete state of Famine. As long as we can find some flaws and cooperate with the original attack, we might be able to force this hungry meat mountain to retreat. Boom! In the dark clouds above, a crazy silver thunderstorm fell down ferociously, exploding on Famine's body. The red fish floating high up kept screaming loudly, breathing out more and more crimson. And the silhouettes of those disturbing dreams also became more and more numerous. Thousands of dream silhouettes layered on top of each other, with an extremely huge amount of information were thrust into Famine's consciousness. There is also the newly added black snake. Although the soul of this mountain treasure is somewhat resistant to attacking the original owner, under the drive of soul-inducing lantern, it still does so, enveloping the thick black mist. Roaring towards Famine, the mountain of hungry meat turned into a mountain and bit into it. As the original servant and pet of Famine, Black Snake's body is now annihilated. But its soul is forced to attack the original owner under the mission order of the new owner. This is not a kind of NTR. Chapter 553 Deadlock. The souls of the three-headed demigods took the lead, and the black snake at the front had already collided with Famine. The black mist on both sides has the same origin, repelling and blending with each other. Roar. The dark giant snake soul spared no effort to bite its original owner. Famine was so furious that he directly used the ferocious mouth on his abdomen to bite off 7 inches of the black snake and cut it off at the waist. How dare you! Famine chewed and swallowed the dark soul fragments in his mouth. While roaring like this, I just don't know if he is yelling at the black snake, or Dorn who is behind it, seeing that one of the 3 demigod souls was almost destroyed at the beginning of the fight. Plague, and Dorn did not dare to neglect. The plague skeleton transformed into Miss Plague raised its hand. The entire tundra began to tremble. The frozen soil rumbled loose and shook off. A skeletal hand that looked like a mountain peak and was as white quickly reached up from the ground, with sticky and disgusting pus flowing from each finger bone. This bone hand was originally open and pointing straight to the sky. After fully exploring the frozen soil, he quickly grasped it and restrained Famine like a cage. Seeing that Miss Plague's attack seemed to be successful, Dorn waved the bat wings on his back forward. I thought about personally entering the battle, using the power of storms and dreams to strengthen the offensive of Storm God and Red Fish. And by the way, see if the soul of the black snake that was bitten in half was still saved. But before his wings could flap twice, a large shadow enveloped him. Death, die, die! Tens of thousands of emotionless murmurs sounded in my ears. This divine war is not about the surviving world attacking Famine. Death takes action. Targeting Dorn. The terrifying tower of smoke that towered into the sky collapsed, and countless illusory faces roared in at an incredible speed. Plague saw this and wanted to rescue, but because it was suppressing Famine with all its strength, it couldn't spare any effort. The next moment, Dorn was directly swallowed by the Tower of Death. Damn it! The plague skeleton creaked and made a dull human voice. On the battlefield, only the stalemate, Famine, and Plague were left. 2 demigod souls playing support. As for the tower of human faces that Death transformed into, after it swallowed Dorn, it remained straight into the sky and stood motionless. The faces on the surface were still surging, but they no longer shouted. He seemed to be digesting the prey in the tower, waiting for the prey to die quietly and become his nourishment. Interior of the tower of human faces. Dorn stood at the bottom of the tower and looked around through the eye of destruction of delusion. The situation inside the tower is much the same as it looks outside. It's still surrounded by illusory smoke, and there are thousands of vivid and different faces surging around. However, the faces stopped talking at this time, and just closed their eyes in silence, with a strange sense of oppression. Wow, wow, wow! Higher up, you can see a flock of crows entrenched there. There are still those crows with green feathers and red eyes, countless in number, gathering together like thick dark clouds. Because of the eye of deception, Dorn can also see the scene behind the black clouds of crows. There is the top of the tower of human faces, where an illusory human face hangs upside down. This face is larger and more vivid than the others, and at the same time, the sense of oppression is much stronger. This is the face of a middle-aged man, serious and rigid. Don recognized this man. Sushiyu. I saw it in memories of war. It was no secret that Death was the backup of Sushiyu's consciousness. So Don was not too surprised when he saw this face. He was just thinking about how to escape from this tower of human faces. He tried to activate Leap White Mist. But as soon as the white mist was born, there were faces around him who opened their eyes and poured out from the inner wall of the tower, turning into green smoke with the aura of death, squeezing the white mist away. It seems it's not that easy to get out of here. Don was not discouraged and quickly tried other ways to get out of trouble. At this time, the faces on the inner wall of the tower seemed to be trying to stop Dorn, and they all opened their eyes and woke up. Death, die, die! Thousands of human faces began to recite emotionlessly, and they roared out. turning into a mist with a powerful aura of death and corruption, corroding Dorn's demonic skin. Wow wow. The crows above also swooped down, scratching and scratching Dorn with their sharp beaks and claws. Even if they killed a group of green-feathered crows with their tentacles, another group would soon come out to replace them. It seems that they can't be killed no matter what. Moreover, these crows are not entities. After being hit by the tentacles or bitten by the suckers on the tentacles, they will turn into a piece of green feathers. The 3 feathers that Dorn accidentally obtained from death that can summon the green crow servants are probably these things. On the tundra battlefield, the hazy sky is completely occupied by red fish and those crimson dream fragments. The storm god is still gathering silver thunder and lightning to smash the scarlet mountain of hungry flesh. As for the black snake soul, after being eaten into 2 halves by famine, it gradually stopped moving. The current situation is not optimistic. The 2 demigod souls that are still active, because Dorn is not in the service area, cannot provide them with increased authority, and their combat power has plummeted. Squeak squeak. The huge mountain-like white bone claw cage is full of cracks under the constant collision of the wriggling flesh and blood. And Plague has never been able to completely suppress famine. Tisk! Miss Plague rubbed her upper and lower rows of pale but neat teeth. While contending with famine, he would occasionally use his peripheral vision to look at the tall tower with a human face in the distance. The faces made of smoke are still silent, and the entire tower was trembling violently because of the structure of the smoke. Although the situation inside cannot be completely seen clearly, some clues can be glimpsed. Inside the tall tower of human faces, the azure ocean auras surge from time to time, accompanied by bursts of lightning. Sometimes a deep red and magnificent dream rises, and all kinds of imaginative dream silhouettes scatter everywhere. Sometimes, the black energy of depravity condenses inside, accompanied by murmurs that seem to come from the void. Plague is clear that this is Dorn using his authority in the Tower of Human Faces to try to get out of trouble. As long as he is still struggling, it means that he has not yet fallen into oblivion. I can't hold on any longer here. The difference in strength between Dorn and Death is even greater. Primordial, take action. Miss Plague said this silently in her heart. The war was at a stalemate, and it was estimated that only the off-site assistance from the Prime God could break the situation. Chapter 554, Dorn's health bar cleared. In the Tower of Human Faces, due to the corrosion of the green smoke with the aura of corruption and death, coupled with the continuous annoying attacks and harassment of the group of green-feathered crows, Dorn's rock-hard demonic skin was already scarred. Hot bodily fluids with a temperature close to lava flowed out of the wound, and the smell of burning sulfur seemed extremely strong and choking at this time. Death is indeed a god with T1 level strength. In the very short period of time that he imprisoned Dorn, Dorn's blood volume has been consumed to the point of nearly 1 million. If you can't escape from the inside of this terrifying tower in time, the remaining 3.4 million points probably won't last long. Let's look at Dorn again. Although he was unyielding in the Tower of Human Faces, he used all his means to cause trouble, using all the skills he was familiar with and the authority he had. But the actual damage caused to Death is minimal. Only about 200,000. Compared to Death as 10 million point blood tank. This amount of damage is nothing more than skin scraping. Although Dorn's resistance was embarrassing, it was not completely useless. When he tried to open Leap White Mist just now, he had already figured it out clearly. This skill, which is very useful for running away, can also be used in the Tower of Death. The reason why Dorn failed to successfully jump out was because the white mist was dispersed by the green energy turned into the human faces in the tower before it had time to gather and take shape. As long as I can condense a certain concentration of white mist, I can get out from here. Dorn wiped the lava-like blood on his face and used the Eye of Deception to look at the situation inside the surrounding towers. The number of crows has been significantly reduced, but there are still a lot of green-feathered crows, black and dense, squatting overhead, and from time to time, they fall down in groups to attack. In addition, the faces on the inner wall of the lower floor of the tower were reduced a lot because they turned into green smoke and corroded Dorn in batches. In addition, they had to compete with the various skills and powers just now, and they were also reduced a lot. The faces on the lower floor are no longer as dense as they were at the beginning, appearing sparse and sparse. You can see that the green smoke in the interior wall is trying to reconstruct the human face. This is the opportunity. A fleeting opportunity. At this time, inject a large amount of magic power to use Leap White Mist. With the current density of faces in the lower level of the Death Tower, It should be too late to disperse all the white mist. As long as the mist condenses a little, I can escape. Don was thinking this way. He saw the opportunity, and once again released the power of the storm and ocean, summoning thunder and lightning like silver snakes to strike everywhere. At the same time, he gathered the sufficient magic power in his body, and once again used his very skilled leap white mist skill. The churning white mist surged out, and the thick white depth seemed to connect to the infinite distance. The human faces in the tower reacted to this, roaring down from the wall, turning into green smoke and sweeping in. However, the concentration of corrosive green smoke this time was not enough, and white mist took shape. Success! Dorn felt happy. He was only one step away from escaping the Tower of Death. And just then, something unexpected happened. Inside the Tower of Death, a feeling that was very familiar to Dorn suddenly arose. It was an extremely sacred feeling. As if in the twilight, the big bell on the bell tower of the Holy See was ringing. It was ethereal and solemn, and it made people want to worship from the heart. My nose and heart are itchy and sour. Don knew that this feeling belonged to the original god. Then, there was a sound. What is certain is that it is indeed the original voice. Gentle and soothing, like a serenade played by lovers under the moonlight. And at the same time it is still holy. It's just that such a sacred and soft voice sounded inside the eerie human face tower that was filled with the aura of death and corruption. It was extremely uncoordinated and full of a sense of violation and absurdity. Don't resist. Dorn, don't resist. The voice said this. Original? Dorn hesitated for a moment and did not immediately continue the action of escaping into the white mist. In his mind, he suddenly recalled what the original god had said to him alone after the small meeting. I need you to completely obey my command at a certain moment. Is this the time? Tell me not to resist. The chance to escape the Tower of Faces is fleeting. During the few tenths of a second that Dorn hesitated, the human faces in the middle part of the tower roared down. They quickly collapsed and turned into green corrosive smoke that rolled towards the white mist. The white mist that finally took shape collapsed. This almost means that Dorn has completely lost the chance to leave the Tower of Death. What's even more desperate is yet to come. Perhaps moved by Dorn's tenacious will to survive, Death came directly to Boda. The face of a middle-aged man with the same appearance as Su Shiyu, hanging upside down from the top of the tower, slowly opened his eyes. Die! 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 He roared together with the other faces, and the sound was so loud that it seemed to overwhelm everything in the world. Then, Su Shiyu's face fell vertically from the top of the tower. Die! The giant face of roaring smoke penetrated Dorn's body. Dorn, who had missed his only chance to escape, managed to hold on for about 5 more minutes before the remaining 3.4 million blood was finally completely emptied. On the tundra battlefield, squeak squeak, the skeletal claws dripping with pus were eventually defeated by famine and collapsed into pieces. The flesh and blood squirmed, and the hungry meat mountain with a ferocious mouth on its abdomen broke free from its fragile cage. Plague! You deserve to die! Famine seemed angry to the extreme. Plague did not respond verbally to the opponent, but tried to organize resistance while calling out to the original for support in his heart. At this moment, a vast and soft holy light fell from the sky like an aurora, with an air of incomparable holiness. It is as if in the twilight, the big bell on the bell tower of the Holy See is ringing, which is ethereal and solemn, and makes people want to worship from the heart. At the same time, there seemed to be ethereal hymns, and hymns being sung all around. The original creator, who was fixing the loopholes in the world while also paying attention to the situation of the war between gods, took action in a timely manner. The sense of holiness that rippled throughout the battlefield had no negative impact on Plague, and was even a little refreshing. But this is not the case when it comes to famine. The holy light seemed to have a huge weight, and when it touched famine, it made him unable to breathe. Even the loose and squirming flesh and blood began to deform, and was pressed to death like a spread meat pie. On the ground, the dense scarlet pupils in the flesh were like unzipping foam boards, breaking apart one by one, exploding into thick and blurry slurry. Not only famine, but the situation on the death side is also the same. The tower of human faces that originally towered into the clouds was reduced by more than half under the illumination of the original holy light. Die! 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 Thousands of human faces on the outer wall of the tower were wailing in pain, as if they were suffering from great pain, but probably because of Death's excellent ability to withstand pressure. These faces barely managed to remain intact. Chapter 555 history seems to be repeating itself because of Yuan's timely rescue. Plague got a chance to breathe. As usual, he summoned 2 huge bone claws dripping with pus, and grabbed at the suppressed Famine. This time the attack was successful. The sharp ulna, which smelled of disease, penetrated the squirming mountain of flesh. Scarlet flesh mixed with blood spattered, and the places contaminated by the disease smell quickly rotted and disintegrated. Famine, suppressed by the holy light, struggled to resist and let out a miserable roar. Seizing this precious opportunity, Plague's next attacks on Famine were successful. It was not until nearly 2 million points of Famine's health were reduced that the holy aura, like the aurora, slowly dissipated in the sky, and those ethereal hymns could no longer be heard. Originally, because they could not completely put down their business of fixing world loopholes in the cloud. The first wave of offsite assistance should have ended here. The squashed meat began to reassemble. The tower of human faces formed by the condensed smoke also grew taller again, because it was clear that the original god was not durable. Famine and Death both chose a defensive posture when the holy light just arrived, and did not fight back too proactively. This is like a turn-based battle. After surviving the original attack, it's their turn. The mountain of hungry meat that was transformed into Famine, although it was injured, still roared and charged with a monstrous black mist. Plague had no choice but to summon the bone cage made of hand bones again and try to suppress it, since its huge bone finger had just broken out of the surface, and the Tower of Death that had been standing silently on one side started to move. Death, die, die! The countless human faces on the outer wall of smoke roared out from behind Famine, as if they were heading for Plague in front of the mountain of hungry meat. This is not a good sign. Plague and Famine, which are in a weak state, are not getting any advantage one-on-one. If one fights two, it will definitely lose. Beyond that, there are even more desperate things. The Tower of Death turned into tens of thousands of smoke and human faces flying out in all directions, and the original tower shape gradually dissipated. At this time, it can be seen that under the position where the tower just stood, there is only the broken demon flesh and blood, and the hot blood like lava. The demon's flesh and blood were so mangled that they were comparable to dumpling fillings. In addition, a half-broken bronze lantern was left, shaking feebly. Dorn! Plague felt fear in his heart. Dorn was supposed to be there. If he hadn't died, Plague tried to sense Dorn, but for a while, he couldn't feel any sign that the newly promoted sixth god was still alive. Dorn probably fell in the Tower of Death? To be fair, the strength gap between Dorn and Death is already very large. If they can persist until the time when the holy light is originally lowered, it will be considered a good performance. But the Plague had always been a fluke. I don't know why, but Sister Evil God always believed that Dorn, who was chosen by the original god, was a being who could create miracles. Even if it is completely enveloped by the Tower of Death, there will probably be a way to escape and return to the frontal battlefield. But the miracle didn't happen. A weak god who grew up in a cram-like manner is a weak god after all. And there is no way he can confront a powerful god who has gone through life and death battles and accumulated hundreds of thousands of years. Judging from the pool of demonic flesh and blood on the ground that had become a mosaic, Dorn probably really lost to the blow of Death and then fell. Plague, who was frightened in his heart, had no time to express too much thoughts about the passing of his teammates, because Famine had already shaken the loose and crawling flesh on his body, and rushed in front of him with his mouth wide open. And the countless smoky faces that were transformed into Death also swooped down above Famine's head. According to the movement trajectory of those faces, it only takes an instant for them all to pour onto Miss Plague. Original Plague tried to activate the space authority to avoid this violent attack, but the towering black mist carried by Famine seriously interfered with the activation of his authority. There is a high probability that there is no way to avoid it. Now we can only place our hopes on the original off-field assistance again. But does the original god, who just saved the day, really still have a chance to take action? The situation on the battlefield changes rapidly. At this moment, Plague felt despair, but Famine was ecstatic. He has seen the victorious outcome of this divine battle, probably because the outside world's attacks on the land of miracles are becoming more intensive and frequent, and more targeted, compared with the last God War. During this God War, the original restrictions were even greater, and this opportunity was fully grasped by the destruction of the world camp. After surviving the initial wave of support just now, the surviving world camp was vulnerable. As for the weak god who was forcibly raised by the original god, he is even more of a clown. Neither attractive nor useful. under the coercive attack of death. He quickly perished. Speaking of which, since Plague betrayed Apocalypse in the last Divine War, Famine has also had a somewhat distrustful attitude towards other teammates. The same goes for Death. He will be subconsciously on guard against Death. Before the start of the God War, the two met and had nothing to say, and they were somewhat affected by this distrust. However, the performance of Death just now undoubtedly proves that Famine concerns are unnecessary. The Tower of Death withstood the pressure of the original Sacred Light and forcibly killed a weak god named Dorn, causing the enemy to instantly reduce its numbers, creating a 2-on-1 situation. This act can be called the key to victory in this battle. Misunderstanding cleared. In other words, there is no misunderstanding between the two. Famine continued to charge forward. The big mouth in his abdomen opened, exhaling the foul smell of corruption. He was only one step away from Plague. Victory is within reach. At this time, a person. No. It should be said that even a god can easily make mistakes. Traitor! Damn! Famine focuses all attention on Plague. He will soon bite the diseased skeleton that cannot resist it. And the next moment, in the sky, the countless smoky faces whistling over have suddenly deviated from their original movement trajectories, whizzing and drooping vertically with a strange posture and speed. If the smoke man dives diagonally downward, it will attack Plague. If the gun is turned around and falls directly below, the target of the attack will be Famine. Die! 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 The emotionlessly humming smoke face hit Famine as scarlet squirming flesh, turning into a green mist with a strong aura of death and spreading. Countless faces fell down like a torrential rain, and the thick aura of decay and death completely enveloped the unprepared Famine. Plague did not dodge after all, but just pulled out a high wall of bones from the ground to resist. When the bone wall was raised, Famine just rushed in front of it. The very thick bone wall was easily crushed by Famine, but it also really took away his strength. Coupled with death as sudden backstab, Miss Plague successfully withstood the fierce offensive of this hungry mountain of meat and opened her position. What does it mean? Miss Plague, who had survived the disaster, was at a loss when she saw this strange and familiar scene in front of her, and she was stunned for a moment. If combined with the results of the last battle between gods and Plague backstabbing the Apocalypse Evil God Alliance, it seems like history is repeating itself. Death, take sides with us to survive in the world? Miss Plague only felt the skull's head buzzing. On the tundra battlefield, where the Tower of Death originally stood, there was only a blur of demon flesh and blood, and a half-broken, soul-inducing lantern. The next moment, a faint light flashed in the area where Dorn died. This light is elusive. It was clearly emitting light, but seemed to have no color, and it has a power that is not weaker than when the soul-inducing lantern was still intact. The kind of power that blurs the concept of life and death. Under this strange light, something quickly reorganized inside. On the frozen soil, the devil's flesh and blood, which had turned into mud and was difficult to remove, were gathered together in an incredible way. It hurts too much. It's corroded by death energy and pecked by countless green-feathered crows. Ling Chi can't do anything more than that. Right. Just a few seconds later, Dorn appeared in the center of the light, maintaining his devilized posture and possessing 8 touches of nirvana on his back. Dorn certainly did not fall easily. He has been possessing a very powerful passive skill for a long time, and after successfully becoming a god, this skill, like other skills, has also been strengthened at the god level. The passive effect still applies to Dorn as a god, but as of today, this skill has just been officially used for the first time. Harness, it comes from the tenacious will and vitality of the Cretan bull, and is automatically used after receiving fatal damage. When your blood volume drops to 0, you will not die, but will be resurrected with 1.5 times the current blood volume and mana limit. Those hardships that can't kill you will make you stronger. Note, after resurrection, the tempering state of 1.5 times the blood volume and mana volume can be maintained for up to 2 hours. 2 hours later, the upper limit of blood volume and mana volume return to normal. Note, after the strength skill is used, it can only be used again after 30 days have passed. Damn! I really just left this beautiful world for a short time. That death was so ridiculously strong. After being resurrected with a forced state, Dorn's health not only returned to full, but also surged to 6 million points. The surge of magic power in his body is also extremely full. There is no fatigue after the war at all, and the state should not be too good. As soon as he woke up, he was ready to fight again. However, after regaining complete awareness of the world and his own existence, he realized that the tower of human faces that had just trapped him had disappeared. Dorn returned to the tundra battlefield. What was happening in the distance was a dramatic scene of death, stabbing, famine in the back. Death is really on our side. There was only one thought that flashed through Dawn's mind. In fact, I was trapped in the tower of death just now. After hearing the words of the girl creator, "Don't resist. Dorn, don't resist." After that, Dorn felt more or less like this. It was just that at that time, death was still sparing no effort to seriously attack Dorn, and he could only resist seriously without having the chance to think too much. But now, my sober mind is thinking clearly. At the moment when death stabbed famine in the back, many questions and information were automatically connected in Dorn's mind. He thought about how he and Vivian took away the lantern and black nails that should have belonged to death in Wenfeng's tomb on Chima Snow Mountain. But death, who had the props burgled, never showed up during the whole process. He even got 3 more green crow feathers. The final result of that incident was equivalent to death sending a wave of god-level equipment to Dorn in disguise. In addition, there are other memory fragments, flashing back like a marquee in Dorn's mind, connected with each other. When Dorn first entered the original Pure White Realm. Original. There is no need to worry about the evil god Death and Death's clone. They cannot harm you. I am restricting them. War, the memory of Chao Jiaosheng shown. Professor Wang. Chiyu, I actually don't think any individual hacker or organization can break through the firewall of the Matrix and implant the complex and complete world data into it. Su Shiyu. You mean, this was done by our internal people? Dorn himself not long ago. After a regular meeting of the God War. Dorn. Was Venus alone responsible for this incredible data implantation in the land of miracles? Although I don't know much about cutting-edge data technology, I always feel that a girl of about 20 years old can fight against the blue on her own. It's a bit hard to imagine something as huge as space. The memory of the encounter between Venus and Xinyu shown by the primordial god. What the haggard man without a face? Venus's father said. Is there really no other way? But prosthetic organs. And at that time, Dorn saw from a strange perspective that Venus was standing beside the ajar door, revealing a fair and pretty little face and big black watery eyes. Especially those smart eyes are impressive. Venus father. Nani, why are you awake? Are you hungry? Nan? Finally, the picture in Dawn's mind settled. That was a nightmare that the Holy Sea's sword-wielding lady had on the stormy sea a long time ago. A nightmare about her childhood memories. In a dark and damp tunnel, the Green Crow Man, who was almost the incarnation of terror, held the bloody, pale Justice in his hand and leaned over little Adele, whose body was trembling. The Green Crow Man's tone did not fluctuate at all. It was so dull that it was numb, and his expression and eyes were like ice that could not be melted. But at a certain moment, his expression suddenly became a little more vivid, and his tone of voice and eyes also had a more or less human change. At that moment, the Green Crow Man looked straight into little Adele's eyes. I didn't say that just now. Right. Little girl. You are a bit like my daughter. Chapter 556. Does my living hinder your output? I should have figured it out earlier. Su Shiyu and Venus are basically a father and daughter. Dawn integrated the information from the ticker in his mind, and all the previous confusions and doubts suddenly became clear. Su Shiyu is Venus's father. Venus is a girl in her early 20s, who has been bedridden all year round. It is simply impossible to program a world like the Land of Miracles on your own and implant it into the Matrix system. But Su Shiyu can, because he is a top talent in the brain-computer technology and data programming industries, and is one of the important leaders of the Matrix project. It is a matter of course that the original God, who carries Venus, and Death, who carries Su Shiyu's memories, have reached an alliance in private long ago. Therefore, half of the 4 gods who dare to love Tianqi are Wuzi. This kind of configuration makes even Jin feel like an expert. After thinking about this series of problems, Dorn was not surprised by death, backstabbing, famine. It's just that my mood is a bit strange for no reason. You too. Father and daughter in memory. Plan, famine, and plan, famine. Why do you have to kill me? Does my living hinder your output? Dorn did not take the initiative to tell anyone about the fact that he had the hardening skill. Not even the plague knew about it. But what is certain is that Yuan Chu must have understood this. After all, Dorn's system comes from the original creator. It was precisely with this original power that Dorn was able to collect various skills in the land of miracles and strengthen himself. So, everything is in the original plan. Right. Dorn felt a little helpless. In fact, with Dorn's thinking ability, it is not impossible to understand why the father and daughter, Death, and the original wanted to sacrifice his life to the flag during the battle between gods. This divine battle looks like 2 versus 2 on the frontal battlefield, but is actually 3 versus 1. Whoever survives in the world will win. However, you will definitely win. But what the result of winning will be, and whether the optimal results can be obtained depends on the specific operation. What is the so-called optimal result? It's very simple. After the divine war was over, Famine completely fell. His body and soul were extinguished, and he completely disappeared from the land of miracles. But it is well known, it is difficult to kill a god completely. To be more specific, it is difficult for a god who is prepared to die. Even a weak god like Dorn, facing the fierce offensive of a powerful god like Death, has a certain probability of being able to escape and protect himself if he is well prepared. Just like if it hadn't been blocked by the original, Dorn could have simply stepped on the warp white mist and escaped from the Tower of Death. And this is even more true for Famine, which is very strong in itself. Refer to the last battle between gods. In the last battle of gods, the specific process was as follows. At the beginning, the original god's 2 fists were unable to defeat the 4 hands, and he was at a disadvantage, under the siege of the 4 apocalypses. Then, Plague unexpectedly turned against everyone and supported the original. This behavior of Plague was not expected even by the original god and Death at that time. Based on the complete information currently available, we can make a bold guess. If Plague hadn't rebelled at that time, or the rebellion would have been slower, the other more hidden mole, Death, in the Apocalypse team will probably choose to reveal his identity and turn against his teammates. But the fact is the fact. Because with the help of Plague and the fact that Death on Apocalypse's side is a bit out of state, the surviving world side can finally win. But after winning, even if Yuanshu and Plague joined forces, they could only barely seal Famine under the starry sky. At that time, there was no war for being a gangster. And even after Famine was sealed, he escaped directly back to the crimson space of the dream. Think about it this way. There is a reason why Death did not react after Plague rebelled in the last God War. Because after Famine and War were defeated, they were prepared. If Death exploded at that time, it might not be able to completely kill one of them. Therefore, it is better to take advantage of the surprise caused by the uncertain factor, Plague. Take the opportunity to hide again, and wait for a better time. And now, the time has come. Because Famine mistakenly thought that Dorn had died in battle, he relaxed his guard against Death. And because victory was in sight, all attention was focused on Plague. At this time, it's the best time to launch a righteous backstab that can kill you. Unprepared gods will die only if they are killed. Based on these considerations, strictly speaking, Dorn's death in this divine battle has a much greater strategic significance than his being alive. All I can say is, what a good death. Done! Although I understand the truth, my mood is really complicated right now. Watching Death stab Famine in the back, Dorn thought of many things in an instant. He thinks very quickly, and this huge amount of information goes through his mind in a matter of seconds. And in the center of the battlefield, in the middle of a big battle, Miss Plague, who couldn't be as calm as Dorn, was still confused. His empty skull head seemed to be a little overloaded, and he couldn't understand why Death suddenly switched sides. However, it doesn't matter if you don't understand. In this current situation, do you still need to think twice about what to do? Cooperate with Death to attack Famine and you're done. Death's attack just now was very successful. And Famine, who was unprepared, was already on the verge of dying. This is the opportunity to completely kill the black-robed evil god. So Miss Plague raised her hand, and once again summoned a bone claw flowing with pus and filled with the aura of disease, and attacked Famine fiercely. At this time, in the gray sky, the holy flash descended like an aurora again. The original support comes at just the right time. In the tundra battlefield, that familiar sense of holiness overflows. Just like in the twilight, when the big bell on the bell tower of the holy sea is struck. It is ethereal and solemn, and makes people want to worship from the heart. Ethereal hymns and hymns were sung, and the singing seemed to come from far away in the sky. Melodious and high, it also seemed to be whispered close to the ears. The pressure given by the original only takes effect on Famine. Dorn in the distance saw this, and quickly waved his wings forward, using the power of storms and dreams to strengthen the output of the storm god and red fish against Famine. He also conveniently summoned a poisonous frog that hadn't appeared in a long time. Poison frog. This summoning skill has also been strengthened at the god level with Dorn's ascension to the gods. But compared to the soul of a demigod, it is still much weaker. Let's just say it's better than nothing. The three giant beasts coordinate their abilities to participate in the battle. Dorn himself is just an OB from a distance, throwing in 2 long-range skills from time to time for fun. Famine's blood volume will be cleared soon. Death's backstab is too deadly. And Famine is now in a completely certain death situation. The purpose of attacking him additionally now is just to accelerate his death. So, I just need to contribute at this time. And there is no need to go up and fight. The 3 big guys working together are enough to handle everything. I only get 1 resurrection coin a month. If I get too close at this time, Famine will counterattack on the verge of death. And if I catch the weakest one and exchange it for 1, it will be a huge loss. Dorn, who was far away, felt like a mirror. The world is awake. Chapter 557. Have you ever thought about taking my place? Famine, the huge body suddenly collapsed, and all the dense, evil eyes on it slowly shrank and disappeared. Even his flesh and blood no longer squirmed. The backstab of death was too fatal, and the annihilation of Famine was almost inevitable. The subsequent siege by the 4 gods only accelerated the process, like adding insult to injury. The existence of this world is a mistake. I have not seen this mistake being corrected with my own eyes. But how long can you maintain this mistake? Famine changed from the state of the meat mountain back to the human form of the black-robed evil god. He sat slumped on the ground and offered no more resistance. Both Plague and Death stopped attacking, and even the original god gathered the support of the holy light. Dorn in the distance entered a wait-and-see state. I lost. Famine said this. There was a strong reluctance in his tone, and it also contained dissatisfaction with the other 3 apocalypse. But other than that, he seemed to be a little relieved. Famine looked up, and the red fish entrenched in the sky had disappeared. The originally hazy sky cleared up at this moment, and the sunlight filtered through the gaps in the clouds, forming several beams of light that slanted onto the tundra. This is the first time I have calmed down and looked at the light and shadow of this false world. Well done. You guys. Just continue to struggle ugly. Slowly, even the last bit of divinity disappeared from Famine. His body began to turn into a faint black mist and dissipate. System prompts. The battle is settled. The damage output is 115,4806. The experience points are gained 750,6239 points. And the level is improved. The system on his body began to display the battle settlement. And Dorn understood that this meant that the war between gods was over. It ends with a perfect victory for their side of the world. On the tundra, Plague, who had returned to human form, stared at Death. The evil sister's brain is still very good. After the battle between gods, she had some time to think, and she quickly clarified the relationship between the original god and Death. Death is hidden deep enough. Deeper than myself. Miss Plague looked at Death and wanted to say something. The other party was his former teammate, then his enemy, and now he seemed to be his teammate again. This feeling is very subtle. But before he could speak, Death turned into green smoke and disappeared. And he didn't know where he went. He left. No matter how he left. When facing him, I always feel as nervous and restrained as Leon Lon when facing Academician Sushiyu. Maybe this is bloodline suppression. Plague, support the forehead. At this time, Dorn finally stopped watching and walked forward with a thoughtful look on his face. I think we should go back and find the original. Second. Miss Plague nodded. Jeebus. I don't know if it was inspired by God or for some other reason. Pope Mohani and Cardinal Meyer in the Holy City seem to have learned the news of the victory of the Divine War. The 2 high-ranking officials of the Holy See, with an extremely pious and excited attitude, welcomed the 2 gods, who returned in triumph, leading Dorn and Plague to the original pure white realm. On the clouds above the field, the original god is still calmly repairing the loopholes in the world, neither sad nor happy. The news of God's victory seemed to have little impact on him. He also seemed very calm in the face of the return of Dorn and Plague. Later, the girl's creator confessed to having formed an alliance with Death early in the morning. The original performance was very calm and sincere. Plague, who originally complained about being kept in the dark, failed to attack and said more. After hesitating for a while, Miss Plague said helplessly, "So, where did Death go?" "Under the starry sky," Yuan Chu, who had nothing to hide anymore, replied. "After the war between gods, he went there to sleep, and he would never set foot in the human world again, unless he was sleeping in a dream war. If you want to provoke the next round of divine war, Death will wake up." The three gods talked for a long time above the clouds. The specific content of the conversation seemed to be a lot, but when you think about it carefully, it seemed that they said nothing. Anyway, Dorn did not feel much joy of victory in the war from the original and Plague. Perhaps for the original, this divine battle was bound to be won. Everything was almost as expected, and there was nothing to be surprised about. As for Plague, the complete demise of famine made him feel a bit sad. After the meeting, Miss Plague left first. Before leaving, I briefly talked about my retirement life plan. Now that the God War is over, I will go to the human world to find an inconspicuous little place and continue to be Dr. Dolores. After that, I will occasionally go to your territory in Dorn, eat your cooking, and visit Alice again. Plague turned into a white light and disappeared from the clouds. In the pure white field, only the original and Dorn were left, as well as a group of lively jackalopes at the lower level. Original God. "The Plague has left. Won't you leave?" "Well, I feel like you still have something to say to me." "Yes. If you have to say it, it's true." Yuan Chu nodded and did not avoid the topic. "Dawn, have you ever thought about taking my place?" To put it easier to understand, it is the authority to inherit this world." Yuan Chu explained a little more. The Land of Miracles, a world that is essentially data, has the concept of authority. The existence that holds authority is similar to the GM and administrator of this world. Therefore, the original God can mobilize the energy of this world and force Chinyu's consciousness back up from the outside world. Only when it originally existed above the clouds was the world in an operable state, and the corresponding world loopholes could be repaired manually. However, the GM is not omnipotent. There is a basic logic in the Land of Miracles that even the administrator cannot change. For example, Dorn's process of becoming a god. Although the GM's power was originally used to open a backdoor for Dorn, the basic process still needs to be followed. "I really haven't thought about this." After carefully understanding the original words, Dorn shook his head. Being trapped in a pure white realm and fixing bugs forever, what's there to think about? "I won't let you end up fixing loopholes like me." Yuan Chu easily understood what Dawn was thinking. "I thought I'd tell you later, but since you already asked, I can't tell you now." "Can? When this world escapes from the Matrix and escapes into the public cyberspace, it will no longer suffer such intensive attacks. At that time, I want to hand over the authority of this world to you. In this case, even if you replace me, can move around the world relatively freely." Chapter 558. The New King Ascends the Throne. "Why did you choose me instead of you?" Dawn was slightly surprised. It sounds like Yuan originally planned to give himself the identity of creator, and she still has the usual style of feeding food into her mouth, and only plans to let Dorn take over after all the troubles and messes are dealt with. "But why? Why didn't I choose you?" Yuan Chu asked. "I brought you to this world just for this." This question made Dorn choke. Yes, if you think about it seriously, although Dorn and the original gods do not essentially regard themselves as Chinyu and Venus, but they carry the memories of those two people after all. Venus' memory bond with Chinyu was the most powerful reason for wanting to give way to Dorn in the first place. "Plague and others must have told you that if you have been a god for a long time and lived for too long, you will feel that everything is in vain," Yuan Chu continued, "because the immortals have lived for a long time. In their long time perspective, everything they see is just a flash in the pan. It's all meaningless. All that is left is nothingness." Plague did say something similar. The reason why the war in the dream went badly was also affected by this kind of thinking. So for the original, who has been repairing loopholes in the pure white field and cannot move freely, the experience of eternal life is even more so. 007 The eternal life of working endlessly at a job is probably not a good thing. It is truly remarkable that the original could persist like this for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. "If I accept the authority of this world, what about you? What will happen to you?" Dorn touched his chin and began to seriously consider his original words. "Of course I won't die." The girl creator seemed to laugh softly. "Venus lived a very hard life in that world, so I will live well here no matter what." Dawn didn't answer and waited quietly for the next step. Yuan-Chu. I want to try reincarnation. Experience this world like an ordinary person. When the time comes, I will seal my memory and ask you to preserve my godhead. Then from a human perspective, in this world, I want to find something that can be called meaning. Even if the meaning is short-lived. I want to try. Dorn still didn't speak, but he could roughly understand what the original god wanted to do. From what this girl creator meant. She seemed to want to get rid of her identity as a god and join the world as a human. To put it simply, it is probably the reincarnation of gods and descending to earth to experience life? Original. If I have reincarnated long enough and you are tired of being the creator, you can call me back here, unlock the seal of my memory, and transfer my godhead and world authority back. This is probably the answer that the original god came up with to combat the sense of eternal nothingness. Divide your endless life into limited lives, and then seek meaning in each limited life. Because an individual's life is limited and cannot span the past and present. Many things become meaningful from a limited perspective of life. After thinking about it, I don't seem to have any reason to reject you. Dorn thought carefully and finally nodded towards Yuan-Chu. He was non-committal and had no opinion on the girl's creator's desire to experience the meaning of life through reincarnation. But Dorn would not stop the other party from doing so. I remember you said that the Wandering Miracle Land plan, according to the passage of time in our world, will take hundreds of years to complete. Right. In other words, I will not succeed you until hundreds of years later. Take up your job and be a more leisurely creator. Dawn added. This is one of the reasons why he agreed so quickly to be the original successor. Anyway, even if we really want to take over the original job, it will be hundreds of years later. Yuan-Chu. Well, in fact, it's more than that. Because after the Land of Miracles is completely separated from the Matrix, I will still need you to come here regularly, and I will guide you on how to operate this world. This may also take many years. It sounds like a lesson. Then I have no objection. According to the speed of time in the Land of Miracles, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of years later, Dorn will take over as the new creator. A two-level reversal of identity with the girl creator, incarnate as an old mother, and open a secret for the new daughter who has entered the world, allowing Yuan-Chu to experience a different life in the world. Perhaps after a long enough time, Dorn's divinity will transcend humanity and become tired of everything. Then he might call back the original one who was killing everyone in the human world. And he might also throw himself into the reincarnation of the human world. In short, it was decided that Dawn would take over the original job in the future. It's the middle of winter, and it's freezing cold. The war between Dona and Tazan has officially ended. It ended with Dona's victory, and the two sides signed a 50-year peace agreement. As the defeated party, Tazan naturally wanted to cede territory and pay compensation, and sign many unequal treaties. There was a time when there were rumors that the unequal treaty on Tazan's side contained such a clause. In order to show sincerity and determination for peace in the future, the Tazan royal family will marry a princess named Nanami to Creek, the grandson of Grand Duke Phoenix. But in the end, the treaty was never put on paper. The specific reason is unknown. The royal city of the Dona Empire, Master Wang, who returned in triumph, has been back in the capital for almost 2 months. The king's division mentioned here is the original army of the north, the troops of the lords, who have responded to the call of the king of the north. The old king abdicated, and the new king ascended the throne. After winning the war with Tazan, the former king's younger brother, the Prince of Northland, has been successfully crowned as the new king. After the new king came to the throne, the first decision he made seemed very willful. He did not choose to stay in the royal city, but instead established the former prince's territory in the north as the new imperial capital, and returned to the north with most of his soldiers. His brother, the old king, as well as his family members and important ministers, were all packed up and brought back to the north. Having said that, the development environment of Northland is still not as good as that of the original royal city. The heritage of the old royal city is still there, and it will become the economic, cultural and even political center of the Dona Empire in a short period of time. Because the old royal city still has very important strategic significance. The new King Dona left his daughter Princess Henrietta and a group of important officials from the north there. Among these important ministers is the old Grand Duke Phoenix, who has outstanding abilities in all aspects and can be called a hexagonal warrior. There is also Mr. Balthazar, the court wise man and great magician, who is as capable as the old Grand Duke. Chapter 559 Build an Island. The Old Royal Capital. This former royal city is located in the west-central part of the Dona Empire, and the climate is much warmer than that of the north. But there are 4 distinct seasons, and it's also very cold in the middle of winter, with heavy snowfall all over the sky. The meeting hall of the royal palace. Firewood was burning in the fireplace. The temperature and the smell of burning would made it difficult not to feel drowsy on this winter afternoon. Oh! In fact, most of the people staying in the warm conference hall are not sleepy at all. The only one who was sleepy was the little princess with the highest status in the room. Her Royal Highness Henrietta. Ha! The little princess tried hard not to yawn. At this moment, she was sitting on a chair cushioned with red soft velvet, suppressing her sleepiness and the lazy nature of her heart, and pretending to be calm and unpredictable. Anlier cough! I mean Her Royal Highness? Veronica, who was sitting on the left side of the discussion table with her legs crossed, tapped the table twice with her knuckles. Yeah, I'm listening. The little princess returned to the meeting with a slightly empty mind. Continue with the topic just now. At the end of the meeting, the young man named Aiden was standing respectfully and humbly. He was originally an aide under the little princess, responsible for gathering intelligence. Later, when Dorn was conquering the red fish in the north, Aiden was assigned the task of acting as a confidant at a literary salon to attract the attention of the great magician Mr. Balthazar. Aiden did a great job that night. The little princess was very satisfied with this. In addition, after that salon, Aiden really gained the favor of Mr. Balthazar. Coupled with the current change of imperial power, the bureaucracy of the old royal capital has begun to undergo a major reshuffle. Aiden, who was born in the north, has the 2 big shields of the little princess and Mr. Balthazar on his body, so he is naturally getting along well. Currently, this young man is already a very popular figure in the old capital. As mentioned earlier, some bureaucrats from the old king's forces are taking the initiative to resign these days. Those who are not taking the initiative, after persuasion, have the idea of going home to retire. Aiden spoke like this with that respectful gesture. The people in the meeting hall were all close confidants of the little princess, so he didn't want to speak too cryptically. There was not much expression on the face of the little princess. Grant their request and arrange the severance expenses. The vacant bureaucratic positions will be filled with our people. Follow your instructions. Aiden bowed, and while recording the princess's words with Navi, he took out another piece of paper from a pile of papers on the table, and said, "The next written request from Eaton Town was sent by Mr. Dorn. The content of the letter is about the reward that your Royal Highness has promised to him before." Mr. Dorn, in the middle of the empire, during the war between Dorna and Tazan, established a regional guard composed of demi-humans. Although the number of this escort team was only over 100, it did an earth-shattering thing. They defeated Tazan's 1,000-man troops, who crossed the sea and defeated Tazan's conspiracy to open a second battlefield. They made an indelible contribution to the stability of the Dona Empire's rear during the war. After the new king ascends the throne, the little princess plans to reward those who made outstanding contributions during the war, and Dorn is also among them. According to Henrietta's wishes, Dorn can choose whatever reward he wants. Satisfy as much as you can. It just happened to be a repayment of the life-saving grace in Golden Oak City, and we could owe each other nothing. What did he want? The little princess asked, while unconsciously straightening her slender waist. Veronica next to her secretly glanced at her best friend with a playful look and said nothing. Well, he said. Aiden glanced at the written application, a little speechless and a little unbelievable, that Mr. Dorn wants a completely neutral territory, similar to the holy city of Jebus. No, the kind that takes part in any worldly affairs. Let's face it, this request is a bit whimsical, but the little princess still thought about it seriously, and then spoke slowly. It's okay to give him a title and set aside a territory for him to govern. However, I really can't give him a completely neutral enclave like the holy city. For Henrietta, such a request, even if it was made by Dorn, would still be unacceptable. So, the little princess began to make compromise suggestions like coaxing a child. Aiden, you write him a reply. Say that I can make him a baron. Oh, no, a viscount. Yes, viscount. I can give him a vast and rich viscount territory. But I can't let Dona's territory lost in my hands. Aiden didn't respond immediately. He was reading the second half of the application at this time. His eyes were wide open, and he couldn't believe the text he read. The original is above. What is this written about? If I'm not crazy, then that man named Dorn must be. even though he was extremely shocked. After he calmed down, Aiden summarized the second half of the application in a professional manner. Your Highness, Mr. Dorn doesn't seem to be asking for the territory that originally belonged to Dorn. He said, what did he say? He said he wanted to build an island on the sea near Silver Shield Harbor. As soon as these words were said, everyone in the meeting hall looked at each other. And some of them were not serious and even couldn't help but laugh. Build an island? Was the island built as soon as it was built? Does that guy named Dorn think he is a god who can move mountains and fill seas? It's crazy. Henrietta was also surprised. She waved and asked Aiden to hand over the written application to read in person. Looking at this application letter, the little princess fell into great confusion and shock. This is what Dorn really said. He said that he wanted to build a large island on the sea near Silver Shield Harbor, and hoped that the Dorn Empire would agree to the island that was about to be born and exist in the world with a complete neutral identity. Dorn doesn't seem like a person who would make such a joke. Does he? The little princess thought so, but she couldn't make up her mind for a while. Veronica, on the other hand, still sat with her legs crossed and spoke in a teasing tone. Your Highness, according to me, if Dorn can really build an island near Silver Shield Harbor, it is not Dorn's territory anyway, so why not give it to him? Lord Veronica, this kind of thing is not a joke. If Dorn really wants to establish a completely neutral territory similar to Jeebus, he should at least give that territory religious significance. Otherwise, it cannot be that Dorn obviously cannot do this is recognized and accepted by various countries. At this time, a more serious minister in the corner objected. Oh, I'm just kidding. Why are you so serious? Veronica waved her hand slightly boredly, and then turned her attention to Henrietta. But he only found that the expression of the little princess at this moment seemed extremely strange and complicated. Could it be? In fact, Dorn said in the application, the little princess spoke. The island that is about to be born will serve as the holy city of Dawn Church, independent of secular existence. Chapter 560 Dawn Church. The Church of Dawn is a religious force that only appeared recently. No one can explain clearly how this religion was born. It feels like a bamboo shoot after the spring rain, which suddenly appeared quietly and then entered everyone's sight majestically. There seem to be very few believers in Dawn Church at present. But this new religious force cannot be ignored. None of the several principalities and empires in the Land of Miracles dared to ignore the development of this religious force. The reason is simple. Just because the Holy See recognized the existence of Dawn Church. Yes, the original Holy See, which is the largest family in the Land of Miracles and believes in the only God, the original creator, actually recognizes the existence of the Church of Dawn. This ambiguous attitude of the Holy See has given the world a lot of room for imagination. Some people believe that the Dawn Church is actually a branch of the original Holy See. Some people also say that the Dawn God believed in by the Dawn Church is a brother and sister of the same origin as the original God. Of course, the second widely circulated statement essentially violates the original Holy See's doctrine of monotheism and is not recognized by the Holy See. There is a more official explanation in the Holy See's updated canon. The Dawn God and the original God are one and the same. They are both the creators of the world. They will take turns to rule the world. The island that is about to be born will serve as the holy city of Dawn Church, independent of secular existence. The little princess's gentle but dignified voice fell, and the entire meeting hall fell into silence. The firewood in the fireplace was burning, and the flames were jumping. After a while, Veronica spoke first. The red lotus witch from the Empire lowered her crossed legs and changed into a more upright sitting posture. So, is that Dorn a believer of the Dawn religion? Putting aside the question of whether there will be islands growing in the sea outside Silver Shield Port, Mr. Dorn wants to use the opportunity of the reward from the Queen to establish his own faith. The holy city is really pious. But it's not that easy to build a holy city that is recognized by all countries. Right. Of course it's not easy. That person's idea is simply ridiculous. The serious minister in the corner started blowing his beard and staring, as if he was furious. Regardless of whether the Protestants need to build a holy city, even if they do, does Dawn, who lives in Eaton Town, have such qualifications? The serious minister was also prepared to speak harshly and criticize Dawn's absurd behavior with anger. He might be qualified. At this time, the little princess knocked on the table lightly, shook her head, and interrupted the minister's speech. I saw her unhurriedly taking out the second side of the application letter and spreading it on the table. Pope Mohani of the Holy See wrote a handwritten letter on behalf of the will of the Holy See. Endorsing Don. The second page of the application form sent by Don was Mohani's personal letter. From the perspective of secular countries, it is undoubtedly a foolish dream for the little-known Dorn to want to establish a Protestant holy city. But if the original Holy See, the largest righteous religious force, stands behind him and endorses him, the nature of the matter will be different. Everyone must carefully consider the complex interests and logical relationships involved. The meeting hall fell into silence again. There was still only firewood burning. But this time the silence did not last long. The little princess cleared her throat before her close ministers could discuss it further. I will support the Protestants in establishing a holy city. Of course, I will ask my father for permission before doing so. Henrietta used the word support instead of agree. Just by hearing this wording, Aiden, who is good at figuring out the meaning, understood the meaning of Her Royal Highness and began to write down it in his notebook. The other cronies were similar. Even the serious minister in the corner was dumbfounded. Since no one dared to raise objections, Henrietta turned to the topic at hand. Okay, let's go to the next one. Edentown. I dreamed last night. A tall and lofty figure stood on the skyline, surrounded by darkness. As long as the place set by the god had light, God said that he was about to send a miracle. I dreamed about it too. And it was similar to the scene you saw in your dream. It's not just a dream. I heard that during this period, many people heard God's enlightening whispers. God said that he was about to send a miracle. During this period of time, the hot topics around Eden were all about the emerging Church of Dawn and the new God Dawn recognized by the original Holy See. Many people swear that they have listened to God's teachings. God said that he would send miracles to the world. Those who dreamed of the new gods, or overheard their enlightened murmurs, believed in this belief. However, the specific form in which this miracle will come is unknown, and there are different opinions. At night, the coast of Silver Shield Harbor. The stars are bright, and the moon is dark. The bright stars shine in the night sky and are reflected in the water. The sea breeze on winter nights is very cold and biting, and generally no one would appear here at this time. But tonight was a little different. A young man with black hair and black eyes, a tall and straight figure, and a mysterious young lady wearing a white skirt and a white gauze, with a proud figure and a sense of mystery, were walking side by side on the beach. As he walked, he pointed at the sea. These two young people who are not afraid of the cold are of course Dorn and Miss Plague. Plague. So, where do you want to build that island? Dawn. Here. The piece on my finger. Don't be so general. How can I help you? Didn't I even draw the picture? Who can understand what you are drawing? Building an island is not difficult for a god. Moreover, Dorn also has the authority over the ocean. As long as he spends more energy, he can make the rocks and sand on the seabed rise one after another. It is possible to carry out ecological transformation of the sea area around Silver Shield Port. As for why he asked Plague to help, it was mainly because the evil god's sister controlled the space authority, and could package and move the entire Eden Food City building to the island where it was about to be born. That night, all the residents around Edentown and Silver Shield Harbor slept extremely soundly. They are all having sweet dreams. It was as if there was an invisible hand playing with their dreams. And there were millions of invisible threads connecting their dreams together, while all the residents were sleeping. The sea outside Silver Shield Harbor was undergoing earth-shattering changes. The air waves on the sea floor surged, and several huge water columns shot into the sky like fountains. A vast and boundless island is being formed and is rumbling up in the starlight. At the same time, a soft white light flashed frequently in Edentown. Every time the white light flashes, a building belonging to the Food City will disappear in place. In less than an hour, the entire Eden New block was evacuated. Miracles are coming. Chapter 561. Thank you for this special invitation. About 5 months after the miracle of dawn came. Midsummer. Silver Shield Harbor. The damp and salty sea breeze carries the heat and fishy smell, which cannot dissipate the sultry heat. Wooden boats, large or small, swayed in the gentle waves, and white seabirds screamed and landed on the poles or decks of the boats. Along the pier, unkempt sailors come and go, and vendors sell freshly caught seafood on the spot. The hyena, carrying Howler on its back and wearing liquid gold armor on its chest, walked out of this lively dock. The young man's dirty red hair was still slightly messy, and the skin on his face was still dark. But as his age and experience continue to grow, he becomes more and more majestic and heroic. Don't walk so fast! Wait for me! The anaconda, wearing a light hunting suit, hurriedly caught up from behind. Perhaps because he ran a little too fast. The anaconda was still gasping for breath after catching up with the hyena. This exiled princess from a neighboring country has wheat-colored firm skin, deep facial features, and extremely exotic beauty. He was clearly walking in the territory of Dona. But the anaconda, who clearly looked like a Tazan, did not deliberately hide his appearance. On the one hand, wearing clothing such as a cloak on such a hot day is too hot and even more eye-catching. On the other hand, Silver Shield Port is already in the influence-radiating atmosphere of the Protestant Holy City. Because they witnessed the miracle half a year ago. Almost all the people here legally converted to Dawn Church. Most people here would not take the initiative to embarrass a little girl like Anaconda. If anyone really wanted to cause trouble, they would be no match for the anaconda and the hyena. I just looked at the three-masted sailboat over there for a while. Why did you just leave me? There are so many people here. If you don't keep an eye on me, I will get lost. You dog. The anaconda pretended to be angry and puffed up his pretty face. Although the Tazan Empire has a vast territory, most of its territory is inland. There is only one port city in the frozen ocean area near the north of the country. Therefore, Anaconda, who grew up in Tazan, has never seen the sea, especially the blue ocean in warm areas. Everything here in Silver Shield Port is new to her. Don't call me that. The hyena shook his head helplessly. Besides, you won't get lost. Last time the hyena and the anaconda encountered the mutated fallen near Beach City. And then Dorn showed up and used warp white mist to send the two of them and Gregor to Golden Oak City. It has been more than half a year since then. Although Thorny Anaconda is a capable A-level adventurer, she is still a little girl. She somehow ended up in the south of Dona alone. And she really has nowhere to go. Therefore, she has been following the actions of the hyena master and apprentice for the past 6 months. Since Dorn had explicitly prohibited the three of them from getting near the battlefield of Dona and Tazan, Gregor followed the advice and took the two young men all the way south. After passing through the rainforest, we arrived at the wilderness adventure experience called Dragon Resting Land. Dragon Resting Place is hot and desolate. According to legend, it is the place where an ancient dragon fell and was buried. Later, there were also rumors that there were countless amounts of gold buried under this wilderness. For a long time, it has attracted many adventurers to act as gold diggers and come here to hunt for treasures. The three of them, Gregor, took risks in this deserted land and occasionally did association tasks. After wandering around for more than half a year, they didn't find any gold. But they did get something even more amazing, based on their more professional investigations and interviews, as well as information collection and compilation. They finally came to a surprising inference. Dragon's sleeping place, deep in the wasteland where no one dares to set foot. There is probably a giant dragon living there. It's that kind of fantasy ancient creature that looks like a lizard, has wings on its back, and can breathe out fire. The three Gregor masters and apprentices originally planned to go deep into the hinterland of the wasteland to further explore. But at this time, Dorn delivered a message to them in Eden Town. This is a special invitation to Hyena and Gregor to witness love. Yes, Dawn and Vivian are getting married this summer. After receiving the news, Master Gregor and his apprentice no longer cared about hunting dragons. They left behind the affairs of Dragon Resting Land and hurried back to the central part of the empire. It's strange that you can fight at any time, but Dorn only gets married once. And if you miss it, it won't happen. On the way back, the hyena had even thought about what kind of wedding gift to give Dorn. Why don't you tell Brother Dorn about the possibility of a giant dragon in Dragon Resting Land? He will be interested in hunting dragons. Right. I guess he will want to try cooking dragon meat. The hyena and the anaconda left the dock of Silver Shield Harbor side by side and walked out of the city. The anaconda reluctantly turned back to look at the lively scene at the pier, and then seemed to remember something. Speaking of it, Goozy, let's leave like this. Don't we have to wait for Mr. Greg? He has been missing since last night. Right. Hyena, don't worry about the master. He has always been like this. There is actually still half a month until Dawn and Vivian's wedding date. Hyena and the others have arrived at Silver Shield Port now, and they have plenty of time. As for Gregor, he was like a stray dog when he arrived here. He was gone in the blink of an eye. Without even thinking about it, he must have gone to the bed of his beloved lady in Silver Shield Port. The hyenas are used to this. But no matter how unreliable his master is, Dorn will definitely still appear in the guest room on his wedding day in half a month. So, just don't worry about him. Oh, it's whatever you say it is. Let's go to the holy city of Dawn. You said there are a lot of delicious food there. Right. The anaconda nodded towards the hyena, his eyes becoming excited. After getting along for more than half a year, the relationship between the young people has improved a lot. The anaconda was very attentive to the hyena's little brother. The two of them have experienced the life and death crisis caused by the mutated fallen ones together, and they have a bit of emotional blessing from the suspension bridge effect. In addition, the anaconda has always regarded the hyena as his savior. Although after that incident, the hyena brother had repeatedly emphasized that he had done nothing, and that the person who saved the anaconda was not him, but Brother Dorn and a mysterious lady wearing a white veil who parachuted in at the critical moment. But the woman didn't think so. When the hyena's mysterious brother arrived, the anaconda had already passed out and had no idea what happened next. She only knew that at the critical moment, the hyena did not escape alone, but stayed by her side without saying a word. Such tough guy behavior and the feeling of being protected. For the anaconda, who has lacked care since childhood, the immediate impression is very good. Therefore, it is difficult for the anaconda not to develop a liking for the hyena. It is said that a woman chases a man with a veil between them, and the two of them have been living and eating together for more than half a year, and they have become inseparable. Our current relationship is more than just friends, and maybe there is only one layer of window paper that has not been pierced. Chapter 562 Old Friends A. Leave Silver Shield Harbor and walk about 1 kilometer south. Here, you can see a cross-sea bridge. This bridge is very spacious, and the bridge deck can accommodate 8 two-horse carriages running abreast. There are no traces of artificial construction on the entire bridge. It is completely built up of rocks and sand. It is a wonderful workmanship of nature. But for the convenience of traveling together, the bridge is paved with neat white stone slabs. This cross-sea bridge was part of the Miracle of Dawn 5 months ago, and it is also the entrance and exit channel into the Holy City of Dawn. Stepping onto the bridge means entering the territory of the Holy City. From the bridge, you can see the island in the distance that was born out of thin air overnight, as well as the neat buildings on the island. It was in the afternoon, and there was an endless stream of people and horse-drawn carriages on the cross-sea bridge, and vendors carrying carts and carts came and went. Compared to the Silver Shield Port Pier just now, it was much more lively. Goozy! There are more people here than just now! Don't stay too far away from me. I will really get lost. The anaconda stretched out his finger and gently poked the hyena's waist. It's not that easy for you. The hyena was about to retort, but his dark face suddenly turned red and he stopped talking, because after the anaconda poked his waist, he put his hand down and carefully held the left hand of the little hyena brother. Then, don't get lost. The hyena changed his words in a low voice. The anaconda chuckled softly, his cheeks a little hot, but his eyes had a little bit of cunningness that belonged to a little girl who wanted to succeed. The two of them just held hands and walked from one side of the bridge to the other, crossing the island. This bridge is very long, but the two young people walked the entire distance and felt that time flew by subjectively. Holy City of Dawn. The religious core area of the Protestant Dawn Church is also known as the unparalleled food city in the world. The streets here are spacious and lined with buildings of various colors. The periphery of this giant city is a residential area. In addition to local residents, you can also see various hotels for accommodation, splendidly decorated bathhouses, and large opera houses. If you walk further in, the main road is the commercial street. There are rows of shops along the street, and there are also various small vendors selling various products on the street. The most distinctive products among them are the handicrafts made from various rare monster materials. After the hyena and the anaconda entered the city, they were still holding hands. The Holy City of Dawn is obviously a religious holy place, but it also has the atmosphere of life and is very prosperous. It is more prosperous than any big city that Anaconda has seen in the two countries of Tazan and Dona. So when the anaconda entered here, it dragged the hyena and couldn't help but look around curiously at the excitement. The little hyena brother had no choice but to insist on finding Dorn and Vivian as soon as possible. He just followed the anaconda helplessly, and at the same time unconsciously held the anaconda's hand a little tighter. The two of them walked in circles, and as they walked, the hyena caught a glimpse of a group of armored Holy City guards at the corner of the street. This is a group of dwarven guards, wearing simple but practical steel armor, carrying throwing spears and war hammers and axes. Among this group of dwarves, the hyena also saw an acquaintance, the guard captain. the halfling Hog. When he set his sights on Hog, the latter also noticed him. Mr. Hog. Hyena? Long time no see. Are you back to attend Mr. Dorn's wedding? Yeah. Of course. Mr. Gregru is not with you. Master, he's still in Silver Shield Port. He has something to do. So he should come over 2 days later. Hyena replied a little embarrassed. Hog didn't understand why the hyena was embarrassed. After all, in the minds of the dwarves of Kasadam, Mr. Gregula, who is not womanly, is a noble man who is as holy as a sage. After a brief exchange of greetings, the halfling captain turned his attention to the beautiful girl with a curious face next to the hyena. At the same time, he glanced at their intertwined hands calmly. Hog, is this hyena your girlfriend? Actually. The hyena was about to shake his head, but he paused. The denial was obviously very simple, but he couldn't say it. Yes, I am the hyena's girlfriend. My name is the Anaconda. Mr. Hog, please take care of me. On the contrary, it was the Anaconda, whose pretty wheat-colored face turned red, but he came close to the hyena and introduced himself to the halfling opposite. At this time, the hyena could even feel the Anaconda's obviously accelerated heartbeat with its arms. Well, Hello, Miss Anaconda. The halfling responded naturally. The relationship between the Anaconda and the hyena seemed so natural and perfect in the eyes of the halfling, who had lived for almost 100 years. He continued in a routine tone. The Corfu district where Mr. Dorn is located is far away from here. Do you want me to take you there? No need. Mr. Hog. The hyena breathed a sigh of relief. I want to hang out with the Anaconda again, and I can find it by myself in a while. Okay. I hope you can spend this wonderful afternoon happily in the Holy City. The halfling captain gestured to the dwarf guards behind him. We have to patrol the next neighborhood. Excuse me. Afterwards, this group of well-equipped dwarf guards disappeared around the corner of the street with neat steps. The hyena breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately afterwards, he felt the Anaconda approaching his ear, smiling and whispering, Goozy, you didn't deny it just now. Hee. Along with a voice. Soft warm breath blew on the hyena's earlobe. Well, the little hyena's dark face was very red. The hyena and the Anaconda randomly chose a direction at the busy intersection and continued to walk around. The new block buildings that come into view have a strong simplicity and pragmatism style. There are dozens of special houses in this neighborhood. The houses are very tall, with doors more than 3 meters high, and the walls are painted with tribal colors. It doesn't look like a human dwelling. Goozy! Look how big these houses are. The Anaconda pointed at those special buildings and sighed in a long voice. Is there an ice giant in this food city? The hyena shook his head. The ice giants and the like are probably just legends from Tazan. These houses should belong to the Minotaur clan. The Tauren. Although the hyena has not returned home for a long time, he occasionally communicates with Bear Claw and Fat Fox through the Adventurer Association. According to the introductions in the letters of these two little brothers, after the Holy City of Dawn was built, a certain size of dwarves and Tauren settled here and became part of the local residents. Most of the human residents in the Holy City were born in Eden Town or around Eden. During the war, these people were protected by demi-human escorts, so they welcomed the dwarves and Tauren. The various races get along quite well with each other. Tauren? This race sounds more like a legend than an ice giant. Right, Thorny Anaconda retorted. The two of them walked around this demi-human neighborhood for a while, and the little hyena saw an acquaintance again. Steelhammer, the young leader of Khazad-dûm, and Miss Favna, the alchemist of Golden Oak City. Steelhammer's bearded dwarf face was tense, looking thoughtful. The capable and valiant Valrona, on the other hand, folded her hands in front of her chest and kept talking. Listen to me. This is the ultimate enhancement of the granular gunpowder formula. Just add a little bit of sugar, and then go through my unique alchemical blending boom. The final product is amazingly powerful. I have already tried it. The hyena led the Anaconda to them, and heard Fabna saying this. Hyena, a mana technology developer, and an alchemy blasting enthusiast gathered together, and the content they discussed was a bit scary. Sister Fabna, the Anaconda said low before the hyena could, because he had temporarily lived in Golden Oak City during his recuperation, and was taken care of by Fabna. Thorny Anaconda had a good impression of this resolute alchemist sister. Hyena, Miss Fabna, Mr. Steelhammer, good afternoon. Oh, it turns out to be a hyena. Long time no see. And who is this? Steelhammer recovered from the academic exchange conversation just now and relaxed his frown. It's the little anaconda. Fafna introduced you. Then looked at the anaconda. I haven't seen you for half a year. You are getting more and more beautiful as you grow. Sister Fafna is still so radiant. While speaking, Miss Alchemist glanced at the tightly clasped hands of the young couple in front of her. The corners of her mouth could not help but rise, and the expression on her face was very easy to read. I hit it. I hit it. The CPI-8 is all true. The two parties briefly exchanged greetings and learned that both parties had arrived here in advance to attend Dorn's wedding. In fact, most of the acquaintances who showed up here at this time came in advance for the wedding in half a month. The four of them talked for a while, and then parted again. The hyena and the anaconda continued to walk around the holy city of Dawn, heading towards the core food district. Fafna made an appointment to treat the young couple to a good meal in the evening, and then walked towards Steelhammer's temporary residence with Steelhammer and several other dwarves. He said that he would personally prepare the ultimate enhanced version of granular gunpowder formula to show the dwarves. The hyena watched the acquaintance leave, thinking silently, I hope they won't make any earth-shattering noise here. Chapter 563 Old Friends B. The holy city of Dawn indeed covers a large area. The hyena and the anaconda left the demi-human neighborhood and walked around for a while, finally approaching the core food district. But before they walked in, the two saw a group of young people wearing chef hats and chef uniforms walking out. Among them was a boy about 14 or 15 years old. After seeing the hyena, his eyes clearly lit up, and he excitedly waved and said, Lo, Brother Hyena. The hyena naturally knew the other person. It was Job, the son of Uncle Lucas, who bought the fruit. In the past, when the hyena was still active in Eden Town, he was the undisputed king of children on the street. Children of the same age or younger respected him. This Job was one of those children. Jobu, long time no see. The hyena nodded to him, and then looked up and down at the other person's clothes. Are you a chef in the food city? It's still early for me to be a chef. I'm an apprentice. An apprentice. Xiaobu waved his hand. Apprentice? Don't you know, Brother Hyena? The food city has been recruiting apprentices with culinary talents from around Eden for a long time. People like me who are lucky enough to pass the first round of tests will have the opportunity to participate for free on a regular basis. Those of us just returned from the chef system training class. Chef system training class? The hyena scratched the back of his head. It's been a while since I've been home, and there seem to be more and more weird things and nouns in my house. Yes. Every week, a chef from a restaurant in the food city will give us lessons. If we are lucky, we will also meet one of Mr. Dorn's direct disciples. Amy, Elsa, and Beretta. Give us a lesson. In the future. As long as the apprentices who participate in the training officially pass the training graduation assessment, they can register with the personnel manager, Miss Hannah, and then officially become a registered chef in the food city and be assigned to help in the kitchen of a certain restaurant. La. Job's mouth seemed to be borrowed, and he was eager to repay it. Once he opened his mouth, he couldn't close it. He talked a lot almost without breathing. And when he talked about the hyena, he couldn't keep up with his rhythm. After that, someone from the previous team of chef apprentices started calling Job's name. So the young chef quickly waved to the hyena, turned around and caught up with the team of chef apprentices. Stop talking, Brother Hyena. I have to go home today to complete the homework left for the training class. You are here to attend Mr. Dorn's wedding. Right. Then when you have time in 2 days, I will come and play with Brother Hyena. The hyena was left standing there with a confused expression. At this time, the anaconda, who had no time to interrupt, scratched the hyena's palm and said, Goozy, did you understand a lot of what that brother said just now? Actually, there is no, that guy is as impatient as ever. Oh, that's good. The anaconda seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and then nodded assuredly. I thought I was the only one who couldn't understand those words. Whether you can fully understand those words is actually not a big problem. It's enough to just listen to the general idea without knowing how serious it is. Anyway, after listening to the words, the hyena roughly understood that the little Amy, Elsa, Hannah, and Miss Veretta, who he knew well, seemed to have grown up to be indispensable in the food city. Mainstay role. They support the development of the food city in their own way. Being able to learn about the positive current situation of acquaintances and friends makes the hyena feel happy for them from the bottom of his heart. In the past, everyone was working with Food City and getting better and better. I know this is enough. The hyena and the anaconda turned into the food court. The team of chef apprentices continued to walk towards the residential area. At the next corner, the apprentices ran into a figure wearing black armor. That armor was made in the style of dwarves. And in the holy city of Dawn, those who wore this style of armor were basically guards. I saw that the guard had long silver hair, red eyes, and a pretty face like a human girl. But he also had horns on his head and a slender tail behind him. It is in the holy city that one of the most popular female characters is Benitha, the little monster girl. After Benitha appeared, she quietly pulled out someone from the team of chef apprentices. Moo! It hurts! Release my ears! Sister Benitha! It turned out that there was a tyrant among this team of chef apprentices. He is Bane, the grandson of Cairn, the leader of the Minotaur clan. Bane! Come back with me! Ollystar and the others are looking for you. The monster girl continued to hold on to the calf's ears. But I still have to complete the homework for the chef system training class with my classmates. And I still have to study. Sister Benisha, Bane protested. Benitha was a little speechless, unconsciously letting go of her hand and holding her forehead. Bane, I think the reason why Chief Cain agreed to let you live in the holy city of Dawn is to let you learn other things. Not cooking. But Brother Dorn is also a great cook. I want to emulate him. Calf Bane's voice came from afar. This is different, Mr. Dorn. The little monster girl wanted to teach her something. But then she realized something was wrong. When she looked up, she saw that Bane had already fled far away. Wait a minute. Bane, come back. Corfu District. This can be regarded as the busiest place in Dawn Holy City. Restaurants with different characteristics are located on both sides of the road. Even standing on the street, you can smell the aroma of various foods. The crowd is bustling, and most of the people walking here can only be in two states. Either they are hungry until they are hungry, or they are full after eating. Goodoo! After walking in here, the anaconda swallowed hard. She was obviously in the former state. What should I eat with the hyenas later? The smell wafting out of that prosperous restaurant is so fragrant and spicy. There is such a strong aroma of barbecue coming from that restaurant with rough decoration. What should I do? I want to eat. When Hyena introduced the food city to her before, he said that it has the most delicious food in the world. The anaconda didn't quite believe what he said at first, thinking that the hyena was exaggerating. But now that I am actually standing on the street of the food city, smelling the aroma of all kinds of food, I can't help but believe it. Arriving at this main food road, the hyena saw more familiar faces. In front of a dessert shop at the end of the street, Miss Charlene, a noble from Silver Shield Port who holds shares in Food City, is dragging the small, red-haired creek inside. As he walked, he seemed to be complaining. Charlene, Crick, please treat me to milk tea and lots of snacks. If you don't make me happy today, I will never pay attention to you again. Creek, wait a minute. Let's be reasonable. The previous marriage wasn't my decision. Besides, wasn't it unsuccessful? Mom, you still want to succeed, right? No, I didn't mean that. The other end of the long street, the door is filled with flowers and plants, making it look like a quiet and elegant small bar. The bar owner Ling Jun led the 3 street children she had brought to Eton to talk with the noble female musician Ms. Babashaw. Ling, it makes me happy to see you again. It seems that you and your 3 children are living very well here. Ling, of course. Ma'am, let me tell you, I'm really good. I've almost taught you all my winemaking and bartending skills. I'll treat you to a drink later. No, several drinks. I want it. As many as you like. I will pay for all your purchases. Jella, Aunt Babashaw. Jella is also here to help. I have now become a trainee waiter in a Cantonese restaurant, and I can receive a salary every month. Pino, Huli, and me. Me too. In addition to the people in the food city, you can still see many local residents of Eaton Town on the street, such as Mr. and Mrs. Lucas who sell fruit, Dr. Fleming who runs a clinic, and Mrs. Majetti who runs a bathhouse. Many of these people recognized the hyenas and immediately came over to say hello and greet them affectionately. This kind of enthusiasm from the folks in the countryside makes the hyenas truly feel like they are home. After finally facing the concern of the villagers and elders, the hyena finally took the anaconda to the core wishing restaurant in the center of the food district. This wishing restaurant is newly built, larger and more spacious, and the names of Dawn and Vivian are written on the signboard. That is, while other restaurants in the food city are busy, this new wishing restaurant still inherits the original old tradition. The door is ajar, and it is not open for business. Chapter 564. Let's hunt dragons together. The hyena led the anaconda and stepped forward to open the door and go in. The wishing restaurant is bright inside, with neat tables and chairs, but no customers. There was only a young lady wearing a white veil sitting at a table in the corner. In front of this mysterious lady, there was a copper hot pot with a charcoal fire burning underneath. The hot pot is filled with bubbling boiling rice porridge. Fresh vegetables and fresh seafood are placed on the table. Seafood porridge hot pot. After tasting it last time, Miss Plague became a little obsessed with this dish that was not dark at all. It can only be said that he occasionally liked some normal delicious food. Plague was simmering hot pot and drinking porridge here normally. And beside him, Alice's bedtime reading was like a big flapping moth, flying up and down affectionately. This scene is inexplicably joyful. The hyena saw Plague and quickly took a step forward. Miss, thank you for saving me and the anaconda last time. As he spoke, he gently squeezed the anaconda's palm as a reminder. The anaconda had long since heard that he was rescued by the Dornish brother and a mysterious lady wearing a white veil, and immediately cooperated to express his thanks. But Plague just raised his head slightly, continued to enjoy the delicious porridge-based hot pot, and said casually, "Didn't I say thank you last time? It's just a little effort." The hyena wanted to say something more, when two figures rushed in from the door of the wishing restaurant. "Brother Hyena, I heard you're back. I miss you so much. Hey, Brother Hyena, I hope you are back." They are two little brothers that Hyena grew up with, Bear Claw and Fat Fox. The reunion of the three brothers after a long separation naturally required some sincere care and greetings. The hyena took advantage of the opportunity to take a good look at his two brothers. The young male who is approaching adulthood grows very quickly, and probably because he has eaten well since joining the food city. The bear's claws have become much stronger, taller and more powerful. The fat fox has gained weight that is visible to the naked eye, and his face is also chubby. When he smiles, he can almost lose his eyes. Compared to Bear Claw's simple physical development, Fat Fox's personal temperament has also changed a lot compared to before, becoming more mature and more astute as a businessman. When he stood there, he really looked like a smiling fox that was round and round, but it was hard for people to guess what he was thinking. After the three brothers chatted for a while, Bear Claw and Fat Fox finally noticed the anaconda beside them. The anaconda was not angry after being left out for so long, and just stood beside the hyena with a smile. "Brother Hyena, who is this?" "Oh, Anaconda, she is." The hyena was about to speak, but was interrupted by a voice coming from outside the door. "Little hyena, you're back. I almost cried thinking about you." A strong man with a height of over 1.9 meters almost swooped in from outside, opened his broad arms, hugged the hyena into his arms, and buried the hyena's head on his solid chest muscles. The one who rushed into the store was naturally Gonzalez. This macho hug could be avoided with the hyena's current skills, but it was not necessary. It's just that the hyena himself didn't care about it. But when the anaconda next to him saw a strong and coquettish figure, he fluttered and hugged the hyena into his arms. His face changed with shock, and he almost wanted to take out his money. Steel crossbow. Fortunately, while the hyena was being buried in the chest by the strong man, he could not stop gesturing to the anaconda. The latter relaxed and didn't react too much. "Oh, who is this beautiful little girl? Oh, hyena, you have become successful and know how to take your little girlfriend home. I am so happy." It took a while before Gonzalez let go of the hyena. Then he quickly turned his attention to the anaconda, looked at it with curiosity and concern, and started to ask questions in that highly recognizable tone. Faced with the eagerness of the macho store manager, the anaconda took a step back in panic. This man is so strange. "Anaconda, Mr. Gonzalez is a very nice person. It's okay." The hyena next to him rubbed his nose that was pinched by his chest muscles and said to save the situation. The anaconda bit the bullet and tried talking to Gonzalez for a while. He really felt the kindness shown by the macho store manager, so he finally let down his guard. "Hyena. Oh, by the way, where are Brother Dorn and Sister Vivian? Why haven't you seen them?" Little Dorn took Vivian to the old capital to try on wedding dresses. "He won't be back until tonight," Gonzalez answered. The anaconda was puzzled. What is a wedding dress? Actually, we don't know. It's probably a kind of wedding dress. Right. Brother Dorn said that he will come back with Sister Vivian at about 8 o'clock in the evening. Then we can see how they look in their dresses in advance. This time it was the fat fox who answered. The time now is still 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And there are still 3 hours until 8 o'clock. Moreover, this time is also the beginning of the busiest period for the restaurants in the food city. Gonzalez and others actually still have a lot to do. To further reminisce about old times. You can do it in the evening. At the moment, the hyena can still take the anaconda around the food city for a while. And Gonzalez and others just go back to work. Before a group of people walked out of the new wishing restaurant. The hyena glanced at the table made by the lady wearing a white gauze. But I found that the lady had disappeared without knowing when. Even the rice porridge hot pot, and various hot pot ingredients on the table were missing. Only the dark red. Alice's bedtime reading was quietly placed on the table. Did we make too much noise just now, and that lady left first? The hyena thought to himself. Considering that the mysterious lady is a person with great supernatural powers. It seems that it is ordinary, and not worth mentioning that she can disappear with a table of food. The west side of the holy city. The Bishop's Court of Dawn Church is in this area. The monster farm managed by monster scholars has also been moved here from the outskirts of Eden Town. It seems to be located deep in the dense forest at the edge of the island. West Street is not as lively as some of the other neighborhoods. The people in this neighborhood are not bustling, but appear calm and pious. When the hyena and the anaconda wandered into this area, some wonderful changes occurred in their mentality, and they seemed to become much calmer. Hyena, are we going to see the Cathedral of the Dawn Church? Thorny anaconda. Okay, I don't have any objection to where you go. Hyena knew that there seemed to be an inexplicable and mysterious connection between the Dawn Church and his Dornish brother. So he has always been curious about this Protestant religion. Now that we have arrived in the holy city of Protestantism, we just want to visit the cathedral. The cathedral is located in the center of the neighborhood, and is the most prominent building here. The appearance is simple, with a tall dome in the middle of the front and red roof towers on both sides. There are also religious symbols made of heavy lead above the porch at the entrance. Like the original Holy See, the symbol of the Holy See of Dawn is also the figure of the sun and the moon. But the positions of the sun and the moon are opposite. Walking to the inside of the church. Unlike the simple appearance, the interior decoration is exquisitely crafted. High-quality marble splicing of different colors, lifelike statues, exquisite murals, and complex pattern decorations fill all the space without appearing crowded. Everywhere is exquisite and overwhelming, gorgeous and quiet. This is the interior style of the Dawn Cathedral. The decoration here is more exquisite than the largest original church in Tazan. The anaconda sighed, because no one was speaking loudly around her. Her voice was kept low so that only the hyenas around her could hear her. The two walked around inside, handed over 2 silver coins as an offering, and then exited. When they arrived at the garden outside the church, the sharp-eyed hyena saw another group of familiar people. Strictly speaking, they were a group of familiar, but not particularly familiar people. These people are all wearing the religious attire of the original Holy See, and they are the Holy See's priests Klaus, Chichio, and Yuval. During the previous crusade against the storm god, the hyenas had met these people. Cross. I'm so envious of Archbishop Dia. I also want to become a clergyman of the Church of Dawn. Then I can go to Dorne for delicious food every day. Keith. If Bishop Meyer hears what you said, he will definitely have to copy the Holy Scriptures again. Cross. Why? Doesn't it mean that Dawn God and Primal God are one and the same? Taking turns to rule the world? If you believe in Dawn God, it's not considered apostasy. Right. Yuval. But the opportunity to transfer from the Holy See to the Protestant Church should be only 5 months ago, when the Dawn Cathedral was just built. Right. After missing that time, even if Cross wanted to transfer again, I guess Bishop Meyer will not agree. The relationship between the original Holy See and the Church of Dawn is extraordinary. When the Dawn Cathedral was first built in the early days, the first batch of clergy working there were even transferred from the original Holy See. This matter is not a secret within the Holy See. Currently, the highest-ranking priest in the Holy City of Dawn is Bishop White-haired Lowly Dia. Dia applied to transfer to Dawn Protestantism on her own. Strictly speaking, she has now separated from the system of the original Holy See and has become a server and believer of Dawn God. The 3 clergymen of the Holy See continued to talk for a while, and then 3 more people in religious clothes came out from outside. It was Meyer holding a black and white book and Adele with a simple sword at her waist. and Bishop Dia, who has white hair and a lowly appearance. Meyer and Adele are dressed in the same style as Klaus and the others, while Dia, a white-haired Lolita, is similar but different. This difference in clothing fully reflects the different identities and beliefs of these clergy. After the people on both sides met, they walked together in the direction of Dawn Cathedral. Cross was still chirping something as she walked. The hyena in the distance saw that this group of people seemed to have something to do, and since they were not particularly familiar with each other, they took the anaconda's hand and left. The sun sank below the sea level. Residents in the holy city of Dawn lit up lamps, and individual shops and restaurants hung up bright and soft light feather nets. The whole city is brightly lit, like a bright and gorgeous pearl floating on the sea. In the Dawn Cathedral, lights were also lit, and light feather nets were hung. Yada finished receiving Meyer and others who came from the Holy See, and walked through the corridor alone. She was wearing the black and white robe of Dawn Church, and the ends of her robe touched the floor. Although she is petite, the religious clothes she wears, coupled with her proud and majestic demeanor, still make ordinary people dare not look directly at her. The believers and church clergy she met along the way bowed their heads and greeted her. Walking through the corridor, Dia walked into the hall of Dawn Church. She is alone here. It is time for evening prayers. There is no light feather net hanging in the shrine. Only a few lamps are lit, so the light is a bit dim, quiet and mysterious. The lamp oil here has a nice, calming smell. In the center of the shrine, there is a statue symbolizing the god of dawn, which is in the shape of the sun and moon reversed. Dia walked to the symbol statue, smoothed her robe, then knelt down and held her hands in front of her chest. The dawn that penetrates both worlds. You are the Lord of Dreams, the Master of Storms, the source of enlightened whispers, and the guardian of the world's delicious food and sweet dreams. Your child is here to be silent and pray. Praise you for your power and love, and thank you for the rich anointing poured out on us from your throne in heaven. After praying, Dia stood up from the ground holding the end of her robe. In the dim candlelight, her red eyes quietly looked at the inverted sun and moon statue. Piously but vividly, she seemed to be remembering something. Then, Dia turned around and knelt down again facing the door of the shrine. Dia has been saved by you. Therefore, Dia is willing to be your most devout believer and servant, serving you for the rest of his life until the end of his life, until he returns to your arms to sleep, Mr. The direction of the gate is towards the food district in the center of the food city. The candlelight in the hall was flickering, and the light and shadow were blurry. It was 7:30 p.m. The hyena took the anaconda to eat some snacks on the street, and then returned to the entrance of the Wishing restaurant. Originally, we had made an appointment to have dinner with Miss Favna, but when the two hyenas went to find her just now, the alchemist lady was still preparing the ultimate gunpowder formula with a serious look on her face. Therefore, it is okay to postpone the dinner date for a while. Anyway, everyone will stay in the holy city of Dawn for a while. The Wishing restaurant is obviously not open, but there are many people standing or sitting inside, chatting with each other. Most of these people are old friends that Hyena met during the day. It seems that everyone is waiting for the return of the new couple Dawn and Vivian. Moreover, Dawn said that he and Vivian's wedding clothes will be shown to everyone tonight. Although the official wedding is still half a month away, there is nothing wrong with showing everyone the clothes in advance. Goozy, I have to say, your eldest brother is really popular. The anaconda took the hyena's hand and walked closer to the restaurant, not forgetting to whisper in the hyena's ear. Of course, he is Brother Dorn after all. The hyena nodded. When we walked into the restaurant lobby, as soon as we stood still, the little hyena guy was patted on the head gently. He turned around and saw someone who theoretically shouldn't be here, but he didn't know when he was crowding around him. It is Greg Liu, who has a pair of sentimental peach blossom eyes and the temperament of a romantic poet. Good evening, Kid and little anaconda. I haven't seen you for a day. Did you miss me? Gregor said in a teasing way as he greeted his apprentice, while his eyes fell firmly on the interlocked hands of the two young men. Hey, I heard from several people that I saw you two walking hand in hand in the food city all day long. Thorny anaconda. Hyena. Both young men's faces quickly turned red, and they unconsciously moved their hands apart. It was as if after being pointed out by Gregor, they realized that they had been holding hands with each other all day long. Don't be so shy. I'm very happy to see you two together. Gregor smiled sideways. The hyena scratched his messy red hair. Master, when did you come? I thought you were still in Silver Shieldport. What do you think? I arrived early in the morning. Don't always assume the worst ill will about me. By the way, how about it? Without me, the superfluous person. Are you living a happy life together? After saying this, the faces of the hyena and the anaconda became even redder, and Greglis smiled so much that the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. It's so fun to tease such a shy young couple. As time passed by while the hyena master and apprentice were talking, more and more people came in from outside, and the wishing restaurant was buzzing with people. Even many diners on the street stopped and stood on tiptoes to watch the excitement. By around 8 o'clock, white mist was billowing in the deserted second floor of the restaurant. Some people downstairs had the ability to detect this familiar aura, and they reminded people around them that Dorn and Vivian had returned to the second floor of the restaurant. It seems that Dorn is back, Gregor reminded the young apprentice around him. The hyena and the anaconda fell silent at the same time. The sound of stiletto-heeled footsteps came from the stairs to the second floor. Then, a slender ankle carefully stepped down the stairs, glowing white against the backdrop of black string high heels. Dawn walked downstairs with Vivian. Dorn was as usual, with a calm face, a tall posture, and a gentlemanly demeanor. The clothes he prepared for the wedding were very spirited and really beautiful. But it is a pity that it is difficult to attract too many eyes when standing next to Vivian in a wedding dress. Standing in the crowd, the female anaconda fixed her gaze on Vivian, unable to look away at all. That dress called wedding dress is so pretty. Also, how come this young lady is so beautiful? I saw the pure white wedding dress wrapping Vivian's petite figure as softly as moonlight. Her shoulders were half exposed, and there was a pure-colored emerald on her chest that exuded a faint halo. Her long earrings of the same colored gemstone moved slowly with her gentle steps. The gracefully curved tube top makes the slender waist seem to be unbearable to hold, and the high-tied silver bun complements the snow-like dress, outlining the perfect curves. The thin folds at the hem of the long skirt rippled gently with the footsteps, reflecting the swollen and pure light. That beautiful young lady looks like an ethereal and beautiful fairy queen who came out of the depths of the forest. Can the wedding dress you wear when you get married turn out to be so beautiful? The anaconda couldn't help but move, and quietly pulled the hand of the hyena next to him, and leaned over to whisper, "Gooch, that dress. I will also wear it for you in the future." The hyena, who was immersed in the joy of seeing his eldest brother and sister-in-law again, reacted obviously half a beat slower. "Huh?" Thorny anaconda. "You spoiled, stupid dog." Dorn held Vivian's hand and walked down the steps of the second floor. The lobby of Wishing Restaurant was full of acquaintances. So good. Looking at those familiar smiling faces, Dorn felt something in his heart. Vivian beside her seemed a little nervous at this time. Her face flushed slightly, so Dorn gently held her hand tightly. As if encouraged by this small gesture, Vivian raised her lake blue eyes and blinked hard at Dorn. They greeted every guest and exchanged pleasantries. After that, he came to the hyena and others. "Hyena, brother, and sister Vivian, congratulations to you." The anaconda found the opportunity and followed the hyena's name. "Brother Dorn, I am the anaconda. Well, thank you for saving me last time. And, sister Vivian, you are so beautiful." Dawn stood in front of the young couple for a while longer. "Anaconda? Well, I still remember you. Speaking of which, did you and the hyena hang out and walk around the food city for a day today?" Hyena and anaconda. "Huh?" Vivian, who was standing next to her, chuckled at the reaction of the young couple. Dawn also laughed. Sure enough, it's so fun to tease such a shy young couple. After smiling, Dorn turned his right hand, and a small pendant appeared in his palm, which he handed to the anaconda. The style of this pendant is somewhat special. It is in the shape of an overlapping hammer and sickle. It was modified from the previous scale pendant, retaining the function of making the wearer conscious. Dawn has been staying by his side, and has not been of any use. Today he just gave it to his younger siblings, which can be regarded as a meeting gift from the big brother. "Hyena is not very good at talking sometimes. I need you to pay more attention to him in the future." The anaconda took the pendant down with great joy. "Brother Dorn, don't worry. I will definitely take good care of the dog." The hyena's face was full of helplessness. "You won't be shy if you call me that in front of brother and sister Vivian, and I don't need you to take care of me." Hyena," Vivian added in a serious tone at this time. "You look like this." In Dorn's words, "You are arrogant." The hyena blushed, but the others laughed. There is a cheerful atmosphere inside and outside the restaurant. After a while, the little brother scratched his head and started to change the subject. "Brother, I have a wedding gift for you. So, in this joyful atmosphere, the hyena revealed all the news that there might be a giant dragon hidden in the dragon resting place. You mean the dragon? The kind that looks like a lizard in the land of dragons. The giant dragon? Hearing this, Dorn became very excited. Even Vivian, who was dressed extremely beautifully and charmingly next to him, had a strange light in her lake blue eyes. Well, 80% of the time there is. The hyena nodded with certainty. Dawn sounded excited. Then what are you waiting for? Vivian, who was wearing a wedding dress, took out a thick ebony staff from nowhere. Oh, then what are you waiting for? The time now is 8:30 in the evening. I went back and forth to the dragon resting land to get some ingredients and came back with just enough food for the midnight snack made by Dorn himself. Let's go hunting dragons together. White Mist billowed, and the figure of the would-be couple disappeared instantly. As for the guests present, no one complained when they saw the newlyweds disappear. Rather, it was because everyone became extremely excited when they heard that there would be late-night snacks available tonight. The white fog is still spreading and does not dissipate immediately. The priest team, hyena masters and apprentices, some dwarves and Tauren, the combat units present looked at each other and followed them into the white mist. No one can resist a midnight snack made by Dorn himself. No one. In the huge and lively food city, a new round of food carnival is ready to go. Here, love and food are not disappointed.